My story might resonate with others, but I have some unique details to share, and I couldn't sleep after the final confrontation last night. My wonderful wife, who is 35, and I, a 33-year-old male, are approaching our 8th wedding anniversary in less than 2 weeks. We've been in a blissfully happy relationship for over a decade, with no major disagreements or breakups. We've enjoyed countless laughs, family trips, built our businesses together, tackled yard projects, and are parents to 2 amazing young boys. Our life together has been a true adventure. Here's what's been happening. Last year, my wife interviewed at a well-known long-term care facility and was offered a top position by her now boss. She's been singing his praises ever since, highlighting his dedication to family first, commitment to success, and belief in her potential to excel at the company. However, things took a strange turn on her first night at the job. After a few months, I began feeling increasingly skeptical about some unusual occurrences. Her new job involved extracurricular activities like golf and fundraisers, which was fine, but some things just felt off. While I didn't have specific suspicions initially, over time, my intuition started hinting at something fishy going on, whether it involved someone or something else. One evening in June, I found myself filled with anxiety, fearing that something had happened to my wife while she was out with her coworkers after a golf tournament or some other event. I paced around the house, consumed with worry. She had initially told me she'd be back in an hour, but that hour stretched into 2, then 3. My wife and I have a practice of sharing our iPhone locations as a part of our relationship, not due to a lack of trust, but because both of us have young children, we thought it was prudent to keep an eye on each other's whereabouts. Recently, I observed her location remained static, situated beside a bustling road. Attempting to reach her via phone, I encountered straight-to-voicemail responses. Concern began to mount as I pondered if she had been in an accident or some other trouble. Picture this scenario. I was at home, on the verge of contacting the authorities as my wife hadn't returned yet. Just as I was about to initiate the call, she finally contacted me to convey she was en route. Relief washed over me upon hearing from her. However, she explained that her phone had died and she was in a coworker's car without a charger. Quite unusual, considering her usual habit of checking in with me when staying out late. It could be attributed to her new job and colleagues as she strives to integrate. Frankly, her explanation didn't quite align with my perception of the situation. Here's the kicker. The location where her phone last operated before losing power was along the route to the restaurant they were supposed to meet at. Strange, right? This behavior was out of character for her. Fast forward a couple of months, and my wife has become obsessed with her workouts, weight, and desires for a larger chest. Her morning bathroom routine has extended significantly. Let me assure you my wife is exceptionally fit, far beyond the average gym goer. She's stunning. I had the chance to meet her boss once. Honestly, he never once met my gaze. Even when we exchanged handshakes, his palms were soaked with sweat. That encounter triggered my intuition, heightening my suspicions. His presence was brief, and he hardly engaged with my wife or anyone else for that matter. The lone interaction he had with me involved asking about my high school, but he didn't even bother to look in my direction as he uttered the words. Essentially, he just grabbed a beer and made a swift exit. Later on, the remaining coworker decided to invite his girlfriend and her daughter over. They all indulged in a few drinks, and my wife managed to persuade them to stay, turning it into an impromptu dinner party. We had a great time, all enjoying ourselves, but eventually, the guy and his girlfriend departed around 7 p.m. Now things take an interesting turn. My wife had been contemplating going out for drinks with a friend to celebrate a birthday, but her decision was still up in the air. As the morning raced with her coworkers approached, she finally made up her mind. She headed upstairs, took her time getting ready, and when she returned downstairs, she looked stunning. After bidding me goodbye with a kiss, she headed to a bar on the east side of town. However, her behavior seemed unusually awkward, prompting me to check in and ask if she was okay to drive. She assured me she was fine, claiming she had only consumed 2 drinks throughout the day and wouldn't stay out too late. I think she might have even requested that I wait up for her, though I can't recall precisely. Anyway, I decided to put on a movie and relax while she was out. Not even an hour had passed, and I started feeling uneasy about not receiving a confirmation of her safe arrival. So, I turned to Apple's location feature to check on her. What I witnessed left me utterly bewildered. Her location indicated she was at work. However, it wasn't her usual workplace. It was a concealed building across the street from her main office. Oh goodness, I discovered she's employed at a place she never mentioned before. It took me some time to pinpoint it, but once I did, there was no denying it. My mind raced with questions like, did she alter her usual route? Was she making a phone call? What's the purpose of her being there? Why did I feel uneasy about her boss earlier today? And why did she suddenly head back out? That's completely out of character for her. What on earth is she doing there? It doesn't add up why she'd drive west and park at her workplace when she's supposedly meeting a group for drinks on the east side of town, especially since it has nothing to do with her coworkers. Upon her return home shortly after, she greeted me on the couch with this peculiar, exaggerated smile that made things feel a tad awkward. She was gone for just an hour at most, but I'm still struggling to comprehend what's truly transpiring. Wow, my partner keeps expressing her love for me. But then, for a brief moment, a thought crossed my mind. Could it be possible that she was with someone else less than 10 minutes ago? I quickly brushed that idea aside, convincing myself that she was probably in the parking lot to make a phone call or something. Looking back, I realize it was a foolish belief. So the following couple of weeks, leading into July, passed without significant incidents, and I managed to push aside the earlier mentioned episode. Our boys have been attending a summer camp, conveniently situated on the campus where she works. Occasionally, there were situations at her job that required me to pick up the kids, or she would ask her colleagues, you can probably guess who, to watch over them for a few minutes. Then something unexpected occurred. I just discovered that her boss has been allowing my kids to hang out in his office, providing them with snacks, and even allowing them to play on his computer. Can you believe that? They've actually grown quite familiar with him. On a brighter note, my spouse mentioned how much they appreciate the support from their new team. Oh, let me share our beach trip with you. We, along with my wife's family, dedicated an entire week to basking in the sun and riding the waves. Each day was spent lounging on the beach, and we even took the kids on some bike rides. It was an absolutely delightful time. However, as soon as we returned, we were thrust back into reality with a hectic work week. To make matters busier, my wife requested that I pick up the kids mid-week so she could join her coworkers for an outing. I was taken aback by the whole situation. It happened to be our eldest child's first day of kindergarten, and we had just come back from our vacation. I found it rather odd that my wife would choose a work gathering over spending time with her son after his inaugural day at school. When I inquired about it, she explained that one of her female colleagues was going through a difficult divorce and wanted to organize a small golf event followed by some food and drinks while they watched the first preseason football game. Here's what's truly peculiar. During our beach trip last week, my wife's coworker accompanied us and booked a hotel room since she lived far away. My wife mentioned wanting to meet up with her before their golf outing because of her tough situation. Doesn't that strike you as odd? Personally, I found it rather strange, but I chose to keep my thoughts to myself and agreed to pick up our kids to accommodate my wife. However, the catch is that the after-school program where I pick up our kids is situated at my wife's workplace. While it's not a significant hassle for me to get them, it seemed a bit unusual considering their proximity to our home. Meanwhile, I work a 40-minute drive away from there, making it somewhat inconvenient for me to leave work early during our first week back. Finally, the moment arrives, my son's first day of kindergarten. In the morning, we capture some pictures together as we walk our son to school. My wife seems rushed because she doesn't want to be late for work. I even recorded the moment with my phone. We've eagerly awaited this day since preschool ended throughout the entire summer. However, something seems amiss. My wife is behaving oddly, unlike her usual self. She's usually quite enthusiastic about these occasions. As we watch our son enter his classroom, I find it challenging to keep up with my wife on our way back home. She has always been a fast walker, but I'm surprised she didn't slow down on her son's first day of school. Upon our return, she hastily hops into her car and speeds off to work, appearing rather anxious. Towards the end of the day, I struggle to wrap up my work in time to reach my kids' location, which is a 45-minute drive away. Unfortunately, there's a temporary road closure due to a construction site on my route, and to compound my misfortune, the highway is congested with heavy traffic. I feel as though the universe is conspiring to make me tardy. As I sit in my car, stuck in traffic, my mind begins to race, And I can't help but wonder, why did she request that I pick up the kids on our eldest's first day of school? And why is she going out tonight instead of being with us? Doesn't she prioritize being there for our son? My heart begins to race because I now realize I'll likely be delayed in picking up our kids from the after-school program. I promptly attempt to call my wife to clarify the situation, but she's not answering her phone. She knows I'm responsible for picking up the kids. Why would she ignore my calls? After all, we're a team, aren't we? Hold on, she's heading to a hotel before playing golf? Am I overreacting here? It certainly feels that way. Yet, no, there's nothing suspicious happening. This entire situation is leaving me with a peculiar feeling. I detest that I'm constantly checking her location while stuck in traffic. So here's the deal. My wife is supposedly staying at a hotel in our city, where we both live and work, but it's farther from the golf course than it should be. Naturally, my mind begins to race, and I'm thinking, there's no way she's there with her boss, right? But if she is, they're probably all at the bar having drinks. Wait, why are they even at a hotel? I attempt to call her, but she's not answering, so I reach out to the aftercare program and learn that she's supposedly there with her female coworker. Something doesn't add up, I'll tell you that. The person in charge of the after-school program reassures me that there's no need to panic and assures me that the kids will be fine. They advise me to take my time and make my way over whenever I can. As I approach the highway exit leading to my wife's workplace, where the aftercare program is located, I notice that my GPS is guiding me to exit right by the hotel where she's supposedly staying. Quite a coincidence, I must say. So here I am, driving along the ramp, already 10 minutes late to pick up my kids. I know I'm acting foolishly, attempting to check my wife's location on my phone while driving, and contemplating whether I should just be 5 minutes late picking up the kids or not. While doing this, I hastily pull over at a hotel and confirm my worst suspicions. My wife's location starts moving, indicating her departure. Due to heavy traffic that's 45 minutes away, the hotel we were staying at, and my GPS directing me on a particular route to collect our kids, my wife passes by in the opposite direction as she joins the highway. It's such a terrible stroke of luck. I'm freaking out, trying to catch a glimpse of her car or even her boss's car. You know, the one he drove when he visited my place and met me. But I can't spot either of them. I'm so anxious that I'm seriously struggling to keep my focus on the road and not swerve off the highway. Oh no, I can't believe I missed her. She just walked right past me. It's driving me insane just thinking about it. I'm pretty sure she was in that room for at least an hour. Now I'm beginning to feel like this is my fault, and I'm attempting to convince myself that it's not real. But deep down, I know I messed up. The guilt is really starting to weigh on me. I feel awful about monitoring her like this, but I'm attempting to justify it due to my overwhelming anxiety. What in the world is happening to me? I arrived fashionably late to collect the kids, still plagued by anxiety over my wife's unresponsiveness. But now I'm starting to panic because my worst suspicions might actually be becoming a reality. To add to my distress, she still hadn't returned my calls. Later, after my kids and I were already home and having a meal, I finally received a response from her. I think I sent her a picture of us hanging out without our shirts on. Her reply was simply, "Wow, I love you guys." Before we called it a night, I decided to try something different and FaceTime her with the kids. It's not our usual practice, but I felt it might be a way to catch her in the act if she's up to something fishy. She answers, and I can see she's at a bar, but thankfully her boss isn't present. Perhaps she was genuinely telling the truth about being at the hotel with her female coworker. So I was with my kids, and one of them suddenly asks, "Hey, where's that guy who always gives us snacks when we come to the office?" Then the camera pans over, and we see him, smiling and waving at my kids. We exchanged goodnight wishes, and I put the kids to bed. After what feels like an eternity, she finally walks through the door. She expresses gratitude that I took care of the kids, fed them, put them to bed, and handled everything in between. She conveys her love for me, and we share an intimate moment. However, despite all the affection and love, I can't shake this sense of violation and unease. The evidence I uncovered was just too glaring to ignore. Fast forward 3 days later, and it's Sunday morning. My wife and I had planned to take the kids hiking for the day. As soon as we wake up, my wife grabs her phone and starts scrolling through it. I didn't think much of it at the time. She then heads out for her usual early morning run. As I descended the stairs, I grabbed her iPad, which both of us use for music. Oddly, it had undergone an update the night before, though I'm uncertain if it's relevant to what transpired next. Just as I was about to launch Apple Music to kickstart my day with some tunes, a notification on my iPad seized my attention. It was a message filled with emojis from my partner's boss. The message was something like, "Hey there, good morning, it's such a beautiful day for a run." This was an unprecedented sight on my iPad. Almost absent-mindedly, I tapped on the message, revealing a subsequent one that showed my wife had messaged him as soon as she woke up. Panic overcame me, and I hastily deleted the message. In hindsight, I have no clue what was going through my mind at that moment. What on earth was I thinking? Well, things have taken an unexpected turn, and I've stumbled upon compelling evidence that I can't overlook. My wife returns from her jog, and I'm rather upset, but I make an effort to remain composed and avoid outbursts. Instead, I recount what the guy wrote to me in my own words. She appears perplexed and uncomfortable with the situation. So I guide her to the dining room, where I sit her down and gaze into her eyes from just a few inches away. Me: "So, what's happening between you and your boss these days?" Her: "What? Nothing? He's my boss, and he's almost 60 years old." She regards me with a look of disbelief. Me: "We have our 2 adorable boys in the other room. What's going on?" I display the text messages. Her: "I'm telling you the truth. Bae is just a playful nickname we all use, and we're merely competing on our Apple Watches. I promised him I would go for a run. I swear there's nothing going on between us." As I walk away, I can't help but think that perhaps I shouldn't have said anything. Maybe I should have remained silent, allowed the text messages to continue, and waited for something that wouldn't deceive me. Nevertheless, I'm at a point where I simply want her to be honest and forthright with me. So we head to the trail for our hike, and things feel somewhat awkward, particularly with her displaying unusual behavior throughout. Eventually, we conclude the lengthy and quiet hike, and the kids end up falling asleep on the ride back. I opted to address the text message she had received earlier that morning and communicate how much it had been bothering me. I mean, who sends a message first thing on a Sunday morning unless they have something significant on their mind, right? Impressively, the moment I brought it up, she promptly acknowledged how troubling this situation appeared. I could sense that she had been contemplating it throughout the day, and she didn't attempt to refute that fact. Nevertheless, she did deny any suspicion of wrongdoing. Meanwhile, the notion of the hotel incident from #4 continued to pester me, akin to a persistent headache. Later that evening, we uncorked a bottle of wine and revisited the topic of the text message. I had hoped that she might divulge more details, but regrettably, she persisted in denying any misconduct and reassuring me that everything was fine. Fast forward almost 3 weeks later. Last Saturday was quite an eventful day for me. I woke up with an intense gut feeling that my wife might be involved in an affair. This occurred on the same day as one of my company's most significant annual events, so needless to say, I was under a great deal of stress. Despite being engrossed in my work, I found it impossible to escape my lingering thoughts about the hotel incident that had troubled me for weeks. To compound matters, my wife and I used to go to the gym together, but she now took our kids along while I headed to the office. I was a bundle of nerves as I tried to set up for the event, and it felt like my emotions were reaching a boiling point. Fast forward to last Saturday, and I had a rather unusual experience. I woke up with an intense gut feeling that my wife might be involved in an affair. This all occurred on the same day as one of my company's most significant annual events, so needless to say, I was under a great deal of stress. Despite being swamped with work, I couldn't shake off my preoccupation with the lingering hotel incident that had been bothering me for weeks. Additionally, I had a pending task that I had been meaning to address for the past 3 weeks, so I made the decision to call the hotel. I fervently hoped that the universe might provide me with a sign that would confirm my wife's female co-worker as the one who had booked the hotel room. My phone began to ring, but I hastily disconnected the call after the second ring. However, I soon began to question whether I truly desired to uncover the truth. Perhaps it was better to remain in the dark. After all, I had work to attend to, so I temporarily set aside those thoughts. Meanwhile, my wife was at home tending to the children. I felt a pang of guilt for not hurrying back to be with her, even though I might have had enough time to return before their bedtime. As the day neared its end, an unsettling feeling persisted, as if something were amiss. It's Sunday morning and we had arranged to visit her brother's house to watch football. Regrettably, I had to head to work, which is unusual for weekends, to address some issues stemming from the previous day's event. Meanwhile, she went to the gym with the intention of picking me up at my workplace so we could head to her brother's place together. As I began packing my belongings, her iPad caught my eye, and although I felt a tinge of guilt, I also knew that there had been some wrongdoing on her part that justified what I was about to do. She had already figured out how to sign out of iCloud and disable text notifications, a clear indication that she was concealing something. As I looked at her boss's contact card, I noticed that she had toggled her location sharing on and off with him the night before. So I decided to delve into my girlfriend's photo stream. Initially, everything appeared routine as I perused her albums, but I stumbled upon something intriguing labeled deleted photos. I had a hunch this would be worth investigating, and indeed it was. Among the images were pictures of her in her underwear, taken the day after we returned from our beach vacation and the morning before she returned to work. I couldn't help but wonder who she had sent them to because I certainly hadn't received them. It struck me as a departure from her usual behavior, shedding light on the seriousness of their relationship. Then, I stumbled upon what seemed like an accidental screenshot on her phone of a text conversation with her boss from the day before their hotel stay. Essentially, the message revolved around their plans to have lunch together, but it was buried amid a flurry of heart emojis. To make matters worse, the boss concluded the message with, "I've been eagerly anticipating seeing you since last Friday when you left. I'm eagerly awaiting your arrival, babe." I was examining my wife's iPad browsing history when I stumbled upon a Google search for how to say one more day in Spanish. She conducted this search on the same day she sent me those alluring underwear pictures, just a day before we returned to work. It made me reminisce about how she used to flirt with me when we first got together over a decade ago. Now, someone else is experiencing that facet of her personality. I can no longer deny it. After 2 months of attempting to overlook the glaring reality, I am now entirely convinced that my life is on the brink of a significant transformation. As planned, I head to my workplace, and she joins me there with the children. We spend some time together, but I am still in shock, and she can discern that something is amiss. Our drive to her brother's place is marked by an almost complete absence of conversation. As I grapple with this newfound realization, and she sits across from me, appearing utterly terrified. In response to my distress, I reached out to a colleague, a man I collaborate with and who also happens to be a partner at a highly reputable local law firm. He happens to be one of the most accomplished divorce lawyers in the state, so I thought he might be able to offer some guidance. I contacted him, and he promptly returned my call. I stepped outside and attempted to articulate the situation to him, although I was stammering and overwhelmed. Fortunately, he succeeded in soothing my anxieties and advised me that the best course of action would be to have an open and direct conversation with her in person. Regardless of how the situation unfolded, what truly matters is what's written on those cards. Consequently, I consulted my lawyer, and we made our way back home. An intense atmosphere of tension enveloped us, and no words were exchanged between us. Once I'm fairly certain the kids are asleep, I head to the kitchen and wait for her. I bring up the same inquiry I had posed earlier. What's happening with our marriage? Then, I assert that I have undeniable evidence of her involvement with her boss, making it impossible to deny. She reacts intensely, though not a single tear escapes her eyes. Surprisingly, she launches into an explanation even before confirming anything. She begins by expressing how distant she has felt from me throughout the summer, which, quite frankly, isn't surprising. The odd occurrences began in early June and have persisted like clockwork since she began working with this individual. She admits to spending time with him but refuses to acknowledge anything more. I decide to be direct and inquire, "Have you become close with him?" She denies any such thing. I press further. "Did something physical happen between you two?" She negates this as well. I repeat the question and she eventually admits that they kissed. I take a moment to digest this revelation. Curiosity leads me to ask where this kiss took place. She stumbles over her words, revealing her lack of truthfulness. She claims it happened after work. I persist. Where exactly? She struggles to answer. I inquire further. Did you book a hotel? She confirms. Was he there? I ask. She admits to his presence. What about your coworker? I question. She denies their presence. I then clarify, so you went to a hotel with your boss just to kiss? She affirms this but insists that nothing more transpired. I challenge her asking, "What else did you two do then?" She responds, "We talked." I point out that adults typically engage in more than just conversation when going to a hotel and suggest that they became intimate. She doesn't dispute this, but maintains that she couldn't bring herself to go further. We engage in a lengthy, albeit difficult conversation, devoid of yelling or shouting. Throughout our discussion, she repeatedly states, "I want you, I want this, I want us. I don't know what I was thinking." She confesses that although she created some distance between us, our marriage didn't have any significant issues. We went on vacations, maintained a fulfilling intimate life, raised our children, and enjoyed romantic dates. It took approximately half an hour for the full impact of the situation to register, hitting me with overwhelming force. To clarify, you wanted me to leave my job early to pick up our kids from the after-school program conveniently situated at your workplace where you interact with this individual. This was all to facilitate your early departure from work to rendezvous at a hotel with him and become closer. Moreover, this was orchestrated during our family vacation, where you omitted the fact that it was our son's first day of kindergarten. I distinctly remember seeing the text message from #6, eagerly awaiting her arrival. Their intimate plans had been in motion for a while, and I recall discussions about the hotel during our vacation. This was not an impulsive decision. This conversation is leading nowhere and feels like a new form of torment. It's the last place I want to be at the moment. Eventually, we both retire to bed, but her attempt at affection sends shivers down my spine. I feel repulsed, violated, and utterly hollow. Once it ceases, I spend the following 3 hours in a state of wakefulness, trapped in a daze. I can't endure it any longer, so I turn to the internet, hoping to find stories of couples who have navigated similar situations and emerged stronger. Undoubtedly, this situation is incredibly challenging. It's about recognizing that returning to the way things were isn't possible, and that it's time to move forward, even though relinquishing aspects like finances, children, love, and memories is agonizing. It feels dreadful and seemingly hopeless. Last night, sleep eluded me and I contemplated the idea of divorce. My thoughts were in disarray, and when my partner woke up and inquired about my state, I was at a loss for words. Subsequently, I confronted her about #2, confirming my initial gut feeling. She could no longer deny it, and her excuse that it just started held no validity. I directly informed her that I was aware of her presence with him at that location. She admitted to merely having a conversation in the car, but the uncertainty of what truly transpired remains. This further substantiates that there's more to this situation than she has disclosed. When she stepped into the shower, my composure unraveled completely. I'd managed to hold it together throughout the night, but upon waking, I succumbed to tears. I realized that one of my sons was already awake and using the restroom in the adjacent room, and I worried that he might have heard my sobbing. I crumpled to the floor and wept inconsolably right in his presence. Witnessing one of our innocent and malleable sons, completely oblivious to the world, shattered me. How could someone be so thoughtless and self-centered as to forget about this precious child entrusted to our care? Subsequently, our other son entered the room and found his father on his knees, embracing his younger brother while sobbing. It was astonishing how my life had transformed in a mere moment. Everything had abruptly shifted. Summoning the resolve to leave my bed, I descended the stairs to prepare some coffee. My partner remained unaware of the turmoil in my mind. The previous night had been tumultuous, filled with restless thoughts about whether I could overcome what had transpired between us. It felt as though all the effort we had invested in building our life together had been in vain. In the heat of the moment, I even uttered the word divorce, but I was utterly perplexed about how to proceed. We sat with our children, attempting to have breakfast and grapple with the uncertain future before us. The atmosphere was undeniably tense. I accompanied my elder son on his walk to school, where he had just commenced kindergarten 3 weeks earlier. This was the same day my wife had planned a romantic excursion with her boss. I had to muster a facade of strength and stifle my tears, observing my little boy dart off toward the playground, frequently glancing back to ensure I was still there, tugged at my heart. He held great affection for me, and witnessing his rapid growth pained me deeply. While standing there, I noticed other parents arriving, some hand in hand and appearing content. It was astonishing how drastically my life had transformed within a mere 12 hours. Oh, I almost forgot to mention that my wife has been dealing with this situation for a while now, though the last hotel incident occurred only a few weeks ago. She informed me that she canceled her upcoming business trip to California with him, the one that had been causing me anxiety for weeks. Additionally, she's withdrawing from a program that required her to collaborate closely with him. Apparently, they will now occupy opposite sides of the building. Frankly, I'm uncertain how to interpret all of this. Here I find myself ensnared in this predicament. The thought of a breakup wounds me more deeply than enduring the current situation. I struggle to focus on anything. My work suffers, and I can't even muster the appetite to eat.
The internet changed how we lived. Suddenly, everyone wanted a computer, including my family. We finally got one a couple of years back. Initially, it was a novelty. My wife used it for email and games, while the kids used it for homework and gaming. I browsed the web and watched adult content. I often worked late, leaving the factory at midnight. Unlike many guys, I headed straight home. Alone in the quiet house, I'd sit at the computer. Eventually, I got bored and started reading stories online. I became intrigued by tales of infidelity. These stories made me suspicious of my wife. I started scrutinizing her behavior, even arguing with her. Despite her reassurances, I couldn't shake my doubts. I read less over time, but the thoughts lingered. I even wondered about my own reactions if I caught her cheating. Would it turn me on? Discussing this with Deb only led to more questions. Our relationship had begun innocently enough, but doubts crept in. Deb's sister Sandy had a reputation for promiscuity. Though I'd been wild in my youth too, Sandy's behavior was on another level. Her carnal exploits were well known, including involvement in ménage à trois. I knew Bob from work. He was a day shift supervisor who got transferred. He invited me to his wedding with Sandy, who was just as wild as him. I wasn't fond of Bob because of his behavior towards Deb. Despite Deb's reassurances, I made it clear I'd protect her from him. We agreed to keep our past relationships private due to jealousy. Our conflicting work schedules strained our marriage. I didn't want to encounter someone Deb had slept with. Nor did I want to admit I had been with her sister when our kids were young. Despite our differences, we managed to get along, though we didn't see each other much. Deb asked me to fix Sandy's leaking sink, knowing Bob was useless with repairs. I promised to take care of it on my way to work. While I worked, thoughts of Sandy's lifestyle as a possible wanton lingered, fueled by Bob's revelations. Despite Sandy's advances, I joked to keep things light. She didn't tempt me enough to risk my marriage. Arriving at Sandy's house, she greeted me provocatively. As I fixed the clog caused by eggshells and potato peels, Sandy hovered nearby, emphasizing her availability. "What are you doing, Sandy?" "I want you." "Stop it, Sandy. I'm trying to finish this job." She paused briefly, allowing me to complete the task. When I stood up, she persisted. "Are you going to sleep with me now?" "No, Sandy, I can't do that. Deb is your sister and I love her. I won't cheat on her, especially not with her sister." "Have you forgotten how it was in high school? Are you too good to sleep with me now?" "Sandy, please, I love Deb." "She doesn't know about our past together unless you tell her. You're a beautiful woman." "But I love Deb." "You foolish man. Either you'll sleep with me or I'll tell Deb you did it anyway. She'll believe me. After all, I'm her sister." "Why are you doing this? Why hurt us? Deb is your sister and she loves you." Sandy laughed. "My innocent sister thinks she's perfect. Let's see how she reacts when I spill the truth." "Sandy, don't do this. I won't have lovemaking with you. And I'll tell Deb about our past in school. I know she'll understand." Grabbing my tools, I declared I was finished with her sink. I left in my truck, my mind racing. Would Sandy lie to Deb? At work, I tried calling Deb, but she wasn't home. I left a message, expressing my love and the need to talk about her sister. The day dragged on, with my thoughts consumed by the impending conversation. By evening, I called home again, but no one answered. Deb had left with Sandy and Bob, leaving the kids with me. I decided to keep them overnight. "Is something wrong, Ray?" asked Deb's mom. "No, it's okay. If you see her, tell her I love her and I'll see her tonight. I have to get back to work." For me, it was one of the longest nights. I knew I had to confess about Sandy before I met Deb. Finally, my workday ended. and I headed home, bracing myself for the inevitable conversation. Pulling up to the house, I noticed Sandy's car parked in the driveway, signaling an imminent confrontation. Unlocking the door, I was met with a shocking sight. My wife, Deb, Bob, and Sandy in compromising positions. Anger surged through me as chaos erupted. Waking up in the hospital, I found Patrolman Gene Andrews by my side, explaining the events that had led to my injury. Confusion clouded my mind as I tried to make sense of the situation. "I see you're conscious now. I'm Patrolman Gene Andrews." "Where am I? And where's my wife? What happened?" "Take it easy, Mr. Harper. You have a concussion from a blow to the head with a glass vase. There was a fight at your home, and though charges were initially considered, they've been dropped. You're lucky. It could have meant 18 months in jail. What about the attack on me?" "Witnesses say you were in a scuffle with your brother-in-law when his wife intervened, hitting you with the vase to stop the fight. It was a single blow to halt the altercation. You should be grateful the charges were dismissed." "Where was my wife during all this?" "When we arrived, she was ill from excessive drinking, according to your sister-in-law. You became upset with her, leading to a confrontation with your son-in-law who was trying to protect her. Your wife doesn't recall much, only that there was shouting. If the charges are dropped, why are you here?" "My supervisor called when you weren't home yet and instructed me to wait for your statement." "So, what happened?" "I have nothing to say. I wasn't going to broadcast that I found my wife with another man. I just lay there and said nothing." "Okay, it's your call. The doctor says you'll need to stay until tomorrow. Consider yourself fortunate no charges were pressed." "You're lucky, Mr. Harper." The officer departed, leaving me with a pounding headache. What now? I couldn't bear the thought of living with a cheating wife, but I needed answers. I phoned my sister to pick me up the next day. I couldn't rely on Debbie, not after this. As I waited for Amy to arrive, the phone rang. It was Deb. "Should I come get you? We need to talk now that we're square." "Square? What are you talking about? You cheated with Bob and you think we're even. Amy's on her way. I just want to grab my things and go." "What do you mean, leave? I was just evening the score for what you did," Deb retorted. "I'm not discussing this over the phone. Amy and I will come to pick up my things, and we can talk then." I hung up and waited for Amy. She arrived shortly, and we drove to my house. I asked her to wait in the car to avoid any conflict. Knocking on the door, Deb answered. I inquired about the kids, and she mentioned they were at her mom's. Beginning the conversation, I addressed her response to my message. "Did you listen to my voicemail?" "Yes." "Sandy claimed you coerced her into having lovemaking. How could you?" "I didn't do that. That's why I left the message. I went to fix her plumbing and she made advances. I refused, but she persisted, threatening to lie to you about us." "I don't believe you. She wouldn't lie to me. She's envious of our marriage and wanted to break us apart. Letting Bob sleep with you was part of their swinging lifestyle. They got what they wanted and our marriage suffered." "No, that's false. I did it for revenge. You assaulted my sister, so I slept with Bob to even the score. Sandy even knew physical engaging details about you, like your uncircumcised state and the mole on your upper thigh. Your sister is promiscuous." "She knew because I was involved with her in high school, like many others. I kept it from you because I liked you and didn't want to jeopardize our relationship." "Then you said we should bury our past." "I'm unsure what to believe. Sandy is my sister, and you're my husband. Instead of asking me, you let Bob—" "Did you really think raping your sister would fix things? You must have wanted him badly to believe them. But Sandy's claims—" "I don't care what your sister says. It's not just about Bob, it's about you not trusting me enough to discuss the accusations. If I had assaulted her, why didn't she report it?" "She didn't want to cause a family scandal, but she had no qualms about involving the police last night." "She didn't cry maltreatment because it didn't happen. You can believe whoever, but this marriage is over. Why would you want to be with a rapist?" "No, you desired Bob and used me as an excuse. That's not true. I love you." "Look up, love. It doesn't involve sleeping with others. I'll grab my things now and see you next week for the rest. I'm consulting a lawyer Monday to start the divorce process." "Ray, hold on. This isn't how it was planned. Sandy said she forgave you and you'd forgive me. I only wanted revenge." "No, you slept with Bob. And your sister." I grabbed my suitcase, packing a few things. "What about the kids?" "Tell them what you want. I'm done with this. I'll arrange visits through a lawyer and Amy can help with the kids. I don't want to speak to you again." I left. Amy drove me to a budget motel. On the way, I told her everything. She knew I was truthful. Weeks passed. It was tough. I worked extra for expenses, found a cheap place, and ate out mostly. In the divorce, assets split equally. Child support didn't bother me. I love my kids. I miss Debbie, but know it's over. Attended school events, avoiding Debbie's family, saw my kids weekly. Deb called often. I listened about kids, but hung up when she brought up us. Visited Amy's for dinner and played with kids. Sandy stuck to her story, leaving Deb torn. I had no proof. It was my word against Sandy's. Deb believed her, which hurt the most. One afternoon, the school called saying Kyle wasn't well. I fetched him and found he had a cold. I informed Debbie, who taught middle school, and she said she'd come home soon. After checking Kyle's temperature, which was slightly elevated, I waited with him. An hour later, Debbie arrived. As she went to check on Kyle, the phone rang. Without thinking, I answered. It was Sandy. "What are you doing there?" she asked. "Well, look who's calling the shots. Kyle was sick, so I brought him home. Thanks for ruining our marriage." I recorded the conversation, forgetting the answering machine was on. "Is he okay?" "Why do you care? You're the reason his parents split." "Ray, things got out of hand. You knew we were wantons, and Bob wanted your wife. If you had just slept with me, none of this would have happened. But instead, you came home and started a fight. You accused me of maltreatment and made Bob assault Deb. What kind of sister are you?" "Bob didn't force her. She willingly slept with him, and she'd probably do it again. She was drunk, and you filled her head with lies, then watched your husband violate her. Ray, you can't prove anything. I warned you Deb would believe me. If you need action, call me. Tell Deb to ring me later. Hope Kyle feels better." She hung up and I turned off the recorder. Debbie asked who called, and I told her it was Sandy. "Your angel sister, who never lies to you," I replied. "What did she want?" I recorded her message. She said to call her back. "See you in court Thursday." "I guess it's our Freedom Day. Don't forget to listen to the message," I said, heading to my truck. My phone rang persistently on the way home, about 10 times. When I finally answered, it was Debbie apologizing, claiming Sandy told her the truth about not being maltreatmented. "Good to know, but it doesn't change my mind. You slept with Bob without giving me a chance to explain. Despite telling you the truth, you chose your sister's tale, thinking I was a rapist. I loved you, maybe always will, but I also hate you for what you did to our family and the distrust you had for me." On Thursday, I took 2 days off work, signed the divorce petition at my attorney's office, and left before Deb arrived. Depressed, I went to the neighborhood bar where I saw Bob. Without hesitation, I punched him repeatedly until I was pulled away by others. Dragged off by the police, I was taken to jail. I made one call, reaching out to my sister Amy. I confessed my actions and insisted she shouldn't post bail. I'd face my sentence. Tears flowed when we hung up. Debbie tried to visit me in prison, but I declined to see her. Nearly 2 months later, my case went to court. I pleaded guilty to assault and received a 2-year sentence, minus time served. Amy stored my belongings, informing me that Debbie was unwell and wished to see me. I refused. Deb truly loves you. Her family is furious about Sandy's accusations. Also, Debbie never showed up to sign the divorce papers. So legally, you're still married, Amy informed me. Prison life was harsh, fights were routine, and I had to earn respect. My cellmate Keeler was a lifer with a violent past. Despite our rough start, he eventually opened up to me. Then, surprisingly, Debbie visited me one day. "What brings you here?" I questioned, feigning anger, though she looked lovely and tender. "Ray, I still love you. I've made mistakes," she confessed, offering me photos of our kids, tears streaming down her face. "I've moved on. Take care of our kids," I replied, receiving the pictures. "I didn't finalize the divorce. I'll wait for you no matter how long," she pleaded. I felt torn. Despite her mistakes, I still loved her. Leaving her by the window, I walked back to my cell. In the kitchen, I overheard plans to confront Keeler. Without being a snitch, I informed him, hoping to save a life. The next day, unsure if Keeler believed me, I stood my ground. He assured me he'd handle it discreetly, earning my gratitude. He concealed 2 books under his shirt, shielding his kidneys. Across from him, 3 allies sat at a nearby table. As the attacker approached and lunged with a knife, Keeler remained composed. The blade struck the books, its dullness preventing penetration. Keeler's comrades subdued the assailant until guards intervened. The attacker was isolated, while Keeler resumed his meal unfazed. It was astonishing how Keeler remained composed. He confided in me regularly after the incident. Despite his tough exterior, he was a different person behind bars. Keeler inquired about my family, sharing his own story of estrangement. His daughter Angie remained loyal, though he protected her from prison life. He cherished her deeply, proud of her career as a lawyer. I recounted my ordeal with Sandy and Debbie to Keeler. "Do you still love her?" he asked. "Yes, but I can't forgive her," I replied. Keeler urged me not to hold on to grudges, sharing his own regrets. His words left me pondering my future upon release. Without a job or family, what would I do? The following month, Debbie visited me again, her eyes teary but smiling. She handed me drawings from the kids, portraying us as a family. "They miss you, Ray, and I miss you terribly. Can you forgive me? Can we rebuild our family?" "I've cut ties with Sandy and Bob. I regret not trusting you," I confessed. Doubt lingered. Would she believe me if faced with accusations again? "Deb, I want to forgive you, but it's hard. Seeing you with Bob is etched in my mind. Did you have feelings for him?" "No, I despised it. I felt sick when you walked in. I regret my actions deeply. I only want you, Ray, the father of our children," she pleaded. Weeks later, Amy visited with unsettling news. "I saw Sandy and Bob together at the house. I don't know why. I thought you should know." Confusion swirled. Had Deb lied again? I was ready to forgive, but now doubted her honesty. I needed to understand why Deb was reconnecting with Susan and Bob. A month later, Killer and I spoke, and he expressed gratitude for my past help. He, a former lawyer, offered to leverage his connections to potentially secure my release from parole. Though uncertain, I trusted him. Keeler's integrity stood firm, despite his criminal background. I respected his stature and refrained from probing further, choosing to accept his word. A few weeks later, I was summoned to the warden's office for the parole board meeting. The prison governor was the first to address me. "Mr. Harper, we have a parole application for you. After reviewing your file, we noted your initial struggle to adjust. Is that accurate?" "Yes, sir. I found prison life challenging, but I tried to adapt." "If released earlier, where would you have lived and worked?" I had to think quickly, realizing the importance of my response. "Well, sir, my sister and her husband offered me a place to stay, and my previous employer expressed willingness to rehire me." "Aren't you married, Mr. Harper?" "Yes, sir, but we were in the process of divorce when I was sentenced. I'm uncertain about our future." "We appreciate your candor. We knew about your marital status and wanted to gauge your honesty." "Regarding recidivism, we're cautious about early releases. I assure you, I'm committed to staying out of prison." "Return to your cell, Mr. Harper. We'll notify you of our decision by month end." "Thank you, sir, for considering my parole." Back in the cell, Keeler inquired about the meeting. I shared my responses and asked if he had any involvement. "You never know, but if you're released early, I'll expect a weekly box of cigarettes on my account," he chuckled. A few days later, Debbie returned, mentioning a parole board representative had visited. "Are you getting paroled?" she inquired anxiously. "What did they say?" he nervously questioned. "They asked about our living arrangements, and if you'll be staying here," she replied, adding, "I'd love to have you back." Changing the subject, he queried about her interactions with Sandy and Bob. "She's my sister. I don't see her much," she responded defensively. "And Bob?" he pressed. "Why all the questions?" she retorted, visibly uneasy. "You promised not to see Sandy, yet they were here together. Did something happen with Bob again? Tell him when I'm out, I'll settle things. And if you're having fun with him in the meantime, I'll deal with it," he asserted. Deb hastily exited the room, confirming his suspicions. He phoned his sister Amy, informing her of the encounter, and she assured him of her support. "Did the parole board contact Mr. Parker about my job?" he inquired. "Yes, they did. He said you could return. You were one of his top employees," she reassured. "You've given me hope," he acknowledged gratefully. "They mentioned you're likely to be released next month. Considering you have a place to live and a job," she added tearfully. Amy's words buoyed his spirits. I received a call informing me of my upcoming release next week. They provided the name of the lawyer handling my case and instructed me to report to the agency promptly after my release. It puzzled me why I had to meet with a lawyer instead of a parole officer. However, I learned that the law firm facilitated my release, handling paperwork, explaining my parole terms, and arranging a meeting with a parole officer. I expressed gratitude to Keeler, remembering our agreement about the cigarettes. Regardless of his involvement in my parole, the prospect of freedom was worth a weekly box of cigarettes. As I stepped outside the gate, my sister Amy awaited me tearfully. We shared a hug and a brotherly kiss. Inside Amy's house, her husband welcomed me warmly. Amy mentioned that Debbie, after consulting with a lawyer while I was incarcerated, had initiated the divorce proceedings. It seemed my suspicions about Deb were confirmed. Yet now, I was a free man. Knowing I needed to arrange visitation with my kids, I called Deb's house beforehand to ensure she was available. I clarified that I sought no trouble and suggested we discuss arrangements on her porch. Reluctantly, she agreed, warning of involving the police if there was any disturbance. As I arrived at the house, my children rushed to me, shouting, "Daddy! Daddy! You're back!" I embraced them tightly, feeling the depth of my longing for them. After a brief chat, I urged them to ride their bikes, recalling how their mother and I used to watch them from the porch. "Debbie, these kids are mine too. I want to be a part of their lives," I asserted, frustrated by her dismissive attitude. "I was willing to forgive you, but you went back to Bob and Sandy. I won't tolerate exposing my children to their lifestyle," I warned sternly, emphasizing the seriousness of my intent. Debbie insisted she wouldn't subject the kids to that lifestyle and claimed she had changed. "Actions speak louder than words," I reminded her skeptically. After bidding my kids farewell, I discussed their well-being and promised to spend more time with them once I found a nearby apartment. As I left, a sense of unease settled over me, knowing I needed legal guidance in this complex situation. I hadn't spoken to the lawyer who secured my parole. Approaching the receptionist, I presented the card from the parole board. "May I see Mr. A.J. Brady, please? I have an appointment. I'm Ray Harper," I stated. The receptionist assured me Brady would see me shortly and directed me to take a seat. While waiting, I wondered if she had said Miss Brady. The card indicated A.J. Brady, so I assumed it was a man. Lost in thought, I was taken aback when a stunning woman in a dark blue suit approached. She greeted me with a smile, dimples, and shoulder-length dark hair. As she extended her hand for a handshake, she introduced herself as A.J. Brady. "Ray Harper, I presume," she said. "I've been asked to review your case. From what I've gathered, you didn't receive fair representation. Let's discuss further in my office," she added, instructing the receptionist to hold calls. "Yes, Miss Brady," the receptionist responded. I followed her into her office. If she had asked, I would have followed her anywhere. She was strikingly beautiful. "Well, Mr. Harper, we finally meet," she said. "Please call me Ray," I replied gratefully. "I owe you my life, but I'm curious, why me?" "A friend of mine asked me to look into your case," she explained. "Your lawyer failed to mention key details like your recent divorce and extenuating circumstances. I presented these to the parole board, who agreed your sentence was excessive." "Why me, Miss Brady? Who hired you? Can I call you AJ?" I inquired. "Look, Ray, a friend asked for my help and I delivered. Knowing who hired me isn't crucial. And yes, you can call me AJ," she replied. "There are some things we need to discuss." "Would you join me for lunch?" I asked. "I don't usually meet clients outside the office," she replied. "It's not a date, just lunch," I clarified. "All right, Ray, let's call it a business meeting over lunch," she agreed, flashing a smile. "I'll let Mary know we're leaving, and then we can go." I watched her rise. She exuded a rare blend of charm and professionalism for a lawyer. We dined at a tranquil restaurant. Over lunch, she briefed me on meeting my parole officer, regular visits, adherence to rules, and staying clear of trouble. "Angie, share something about yourself," I requested. "Ray, discussing my personal life with a client wouldn't be appropriate," she responded. "Your smile is captivating," I complimented, prompting her blush. "Tell me about your legal background," I persisted. She revealed her scholarship-acquired law degree and experience in criminal law. As we ate, Angie lingered in my thoughts. "Will I see you again?" I inquired. "Return next week for paperwork with your parole officer." "We can have lunch then," she agreed, softening slightly. After lunch, we returned to the office. When she extended her hand, I held it briefly, pondering her thoughts. We bid farewell, and I eagerly anticipated our next lunch. Her secretary's smile hinted at the rarity of such interactions, a testament to Angie's uniqueness. I returned to work, swiftly completing tasks as if it were second nature. My colleagues seemed to regard me with newfound respect, and no one dared to challenge me. For 2 consecutive Mondays, I met with Angie, initially maintaining a professional relationship. However, by the 4th week, she informed me that our business collaboration had ceased. "Are you still my lawyer?" I inquired. "Certainly. Call me if you encounter any issues," she assured. "Angie, I regret to inform you that I must terminate our arrangement," I confessed. "Terminate? After all I've done to assist you?" she exclaimed. "Yes. I desire more than a professional connection. I want to take you on a genuine date. Get to know you better," I expressed. Ray, I'm conflicted. There's an attraction, but what will people think? She pondered. I don't care about perceptions. Just join me once. If it doesn't feel right, we won't repeat it. Let's follow our hearts, I urged. After hesitation, she reluctantly agreed. I'll go, but don't expect anything more, she cautioned, surprised by her own words. Angie agreed, and on Saturday, we took a drive. I borrowed a car from my sister, opting not to use my old truck. Arriving at her townhouse, I was greeted by a stunning woman as she opened the door. Despite individual perceptions, to me, she appeared breathtaking. Resisting the urge to embrace her immediately, I reminded myself to act as a gentleman, though it wasn't easy. At a fancy restaurant, we enjoyed wine followed by dinner. Afterward, we conversed while listening to music. Angie, tell me about yourself. Where did you grow up? I noticed your last name differs from your father's, I inquired. You know my story, Ray. My parents' relationship was troubled, ending in my father's incarceration for the past 14 years. Raised by extended family, I, the youngest, was only 14 when it all unfolded. It was a difficult time. Despite loving him, my siblings couldn't forgive our father for his actions. I harbored guilt for revealing my mother's infidelity to him. Perhaps if I had stayed silent, things might have been different. Angie, you shouldn't blame yourself for your mom's decease or your dad's imprisonment. You were just a child trying to do the right thing, I reassured her. After my father was incarcerated, I resolved to attend college and pursue a career in law, hoping to assist him with a lighter sentence. That's why I specialized in criminal law. Despite my efforts, there wasn't much I could do for him, Angie explained. As for your question about my marital status, I wasn't married long, and it's not something I want to discuss, she replied with a smile. Ray, can we table this conversation for another time? I'm enjoying our evening together, and I'd rather not dwell on these topics. Would you like to dance? She suggested. I'm not much of a dancer, but I'd love to hold you close, I responded. As we danced, I embraced Angie, cherishing the moment. Ray, I have trust issues, especially with men due to my social circles. I'm just being upfront with you. If it weren't for my father's intervention, I might not have agreed to this date, Angie admitted. I'll make sure to send your father some extra cigarettes. Angie, you mean a lot to me, and I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust. If I overstep, just let me know, and I'll respect your boundaries, I promised. When I dropped her off that night, I kissed her at the door, leaving her in silence. She kissed me again and leaned back. Can I come in, Angie? Not today, Ray. It's too soon. Maybe next Saturday? That could work. Give me a call on Thursday. I returned home, filled with happiness. We got together the next 2 Saturdays. During our time together, she opened up more. Ray, I want you to know me better. If we're going to keep seeing each other, I won't hide anything. I've been married before, as I mentioned. It happened during my freshman year of college. My boyfriend and I thought we were in love, so we got married after I got pregnant. But we soon realized we were too young, and the marriage failed. I had a mishap, and we ended up divorcing. I kept the last name Brady to distance myself from my maiden name Miller, as my father insisted. I felt relieved that she trusted me with her story. She asked about my kids, expressing interest in meeting them. I had already told them about her, and my daughter was eager to meet her. Angie, would you like to join us? My sister is hosting a family barbecue next Saturday, and you're invited. It would mean a lot to me if you came. I knew it was a significant step for us. She avoided eye contact, indicating she understood the importance of this invitation. After a deep breath, she looked at me and kissed me passionately, a first for us. Pulling back, she took another breath. Okay, Ray, I'll come. What can I bring? I wasn't sure what women typically brought to these gatherings, so I suggested Amy could discuss it with her. When I informed Amy about Angie attending the party, the guest list expanded. Everyone wanted to meet her. My parents, cousins, aunts, and uncles all showed up. Angie offered to make potato salad. Amy mentioned how sweet Angie sounded on the phone, hinting at her hopes for our relationship. Every weekend, I visited Deb's house to pick up my kids. We'd either hang out at Amy's or do something fun together. I asked about their mother respectfully. Kyle mentioned she was dating a man, which concerned me initially. But Kayla reassured me. He was their school teacher named Pat. He'd lost his wife to leukemia and had moved to start anew. He had a daughter their age, whom Kyle and Kayla liked. I need to tell you something, Deb. Your deceit and infidelity destroyed us. If you value this man, treat him right. Most importantly, be truthful with him. Don't repeat the same mistakes you made with us. Pat cares for our children and treats them well. He's aware of your existence and acknowledges you as their father. I hope things work out for us. I hope I haven't tarnished your future relationships. Ray, you're a decent man, and I believe you'll find the right partner. I'm just sorry for the pain I caused you. After bidding farewell, I drove home. I rented a small apartment about a mile from Deb and the kids. Opted for a 2-bedroom place so the kids have a spot when they're with me. I still swing by Amy's a couple times a week, usually for a meal, but I enjoy visiting them too. As the barbecue day arrived, I felt anxious. Waiting outside, I felt immense relief seeing Angie's car pull up. She greeted me with a smile, offering a bowl of potato salad. "Make sure to have some," she teased. She looked stunning. I couldn't see her any other way. Being with her made me feel elated. I realized I'd fallen for her, even though we'd only shared kisses. Some things you just know. I hoped she felt something for me too. Introducing her as my good friend, I watched as she mingled with everyone. Mom and Dad instantly took a liking to her. Dad even quipped, "Don't let her get away, Ray. We already adore her and we barely know her." Angie glanced at me and smiled. When I introduced her to Amy, their mutual glance seemed like positive reinforcement. "Ray, I never mentioned this, but I encountered your sister during the parole interviews. I didn't bring it up as it wasn't relevant until now. I never anticipated we'd become acquaintances. I assured you of my honesty, which is why I'm disclosing this now. Amy and I hadn't communicated since your parole until she contacted me about the potato salad. Have you conversed with anyone else I should be aware of?" "Yes, I've spoken to Deb, your ex-wife, Sue, and Bob, naturally. Additionally, I liaised with your employer to secure your position considering those involved in the bar incident and your arrest. I handled all of this as your legal representative." I never foresaw developing feelings for you, especially without meeting. I regret not divulging this earlier, but as your attorney, I needed to ascertain the truth before fully supporting you. If you want me to depart, please say so, and I'll oblige. "Leave, leave." All I heard was your declaration of love for me. I embraced her with a kiss, followed by a hug, and then introduced her to the rest of the family. I informed Angie I'd return shortly as I needed to pick up the kids, who were eager to meet her. Upon my return, Kayla approached and introduced herself to Angie. "Hi, I'm Kayla. Are you Daddy's girlfriend? You're really pretty."
Just like Daddy said. "Hi, Kayla. You can call me Angie or AJ. You're a very pretty girl, too. It's really nice to meet you," Kayla then said. "Come meet my older brother. He's 10 and a bit shy around girls. Kyle, this is AJ, Daddy's friend." I observed Kyle shaking Angie's hand. She knelt down to chat with the kids at their level. The way they interacted indicated they were likely to become friends. I joined them, and Kyle, not typically talkative,
Told me, "We like her, Daddy. She's so pretty and sweet." Angie simply glanced at me and smiled. The barbecue was fantastic as the evening progressed. While chatting with Angie, Kyle and Kayla approached us. "Dad, remember you mentioned going to the amusement park in 2 weeks? Can Angie come with us? That way, when Kayla and I ride the attractions, you'll have someone to talk to." I attempted to convey to Kyle that such inquiries should be made in private. Angie might have other commitments or might not enjoy amusement parks. He glanced at Angie and apologized to her. "Sorry, Angie. I didn't realize you weren't fond of amusement parks." Angie chuckled and knelt down, addressing Kyle. "Sweetheart, what your daddy means is that those questions are better asked to him privately, not me. As for amusement parks, I adore them and would love to go. If it's all right with your daddy, perhaps you and I can enjoy the roller coaster together." Sure enough, we all headed to the amusement park, where the kids eagerly rode every attraction. Angie kept her promise to Kyle and rode the roller coaster with him, as well as the Ferris wheel. On our way back, Kayla remarked, "Dad, you should get a car instead of your truck. Angie can't always use hers. We won't all fit in your truck." We chuckled at Kayla's observation, realizing she was correct. Over the following weeks, I didn't see much of Angie. Work kept me busy on weekends, and she had court obligations. Although we spoke on the phone occasionally, it wasn't the same. One Saturday, I picked up the kids, and we decided to visit Chuck E. Cheese's, a pizza place with various games and prizes. After arriving home, Kayla asked if she could invite Angie to join us. Not wanting to disappoint her, I agreed to call Angie. "Angie!" I called out. "Angie, it's Ray. Kayla wanted me to give you a call. Any plans for tonight?" "Oh, hey, Ray. I was going out with some friends." "Oh, okay. Have a great time." "Ray, you mentioned Kayla wanted to talk to me. Can you put her on the line, please?" "It's all right, Angie." "Sure, that'd be nice. Could you pass the phone to Kayla?" I could only hear one side of the conversation. "Hey, Angie, Dad's taking Kyle and me to Chuck E. Cheese's for pizza and games. We thought you might want to join us." "Yeah, okay. I'll let him know we miss you too." "All right, bye." I felt bad for Kayla. I'm sorry, honey, but Angie already has plans. What do you mean, Dad? She said she'd be here in half an hour. She mentioned she's getting a car, so she doesn't always have to use hers. Yeah, Daddy, she said she misses us. Later that evening, after we returned from a pizza party where the kids won a bunch of stuffed animals thanks to Angie's skills at the games, I dropped them off at their mom's house. Angie expressed her desire for us to get to know each other better. We headed to my apartment and settled on the couch. Angie, you know I care about you, right? I wouldn't be here if I didn't. I want to be engaged with you. I haven't trusted a man in a long time. All I ask is for you to be gentle and caring. I don't want to feel used. I want to feel loved. We began on the couch and eventually moved to the bedroom, indulging in whatever pleased us. I pampered her feet with massages, licked whipped cream off her stomach, and explored every sensation. We spent hours caressing, massaging, and expressing our love. Holding her in my arms after lovemaking was when I felt most content. It was comforting to cuddle and feel her close to me, something I hadn't experienced in a long while. She ended up staying the entire night. I rose before her and prepared French toast for us. Emerging from the bedroom, she wore one of my t-shirts, which looked particularly fetching on her. I couldn't help but express my admiration for how wonderful she looked, even in the morning. After a quick shower, we sat down to talk. Angie, what do you envision for our future? You know how much I love you, and my children and family adore you. What are your thoughts on what comes next? Ray, I feel like I'm sounding like a lawyer. We've only known each other for a few months, and last night was our first time making love. I understand it's early, but I want you in my life every day. If we haven't had our fill of love, we can return to the bedroom and spend the whole day there. Angie smiled at the suggestion. Angie, I want you to be my wife. Will you marry me? Tears welled in Angie's eyes. Ray, I want you to know I don't take love lightly. I've made mistakes before, as I've told you. Yes, I will marry you. I promise to always be there for you and the kids. I know the pain of your past marriage, and I vow to be honest and faithful. I expect the same from you. She leaned in and kissed me passionately. Honey, what's on your mind? You seem happy yet sad, I inquired. These are my reflections on my dad, and how joyful he will be. Many young girls dream of their special wedding day, envisioning themselves in a white dress, escorted down the aisle by their father to meet their future spouse. I realize that won't be my reality, and it saddens me deeply. She shed quiet tears. Last time, my father wasn't even aware of my wedding. By the time I reached out to him, I had suffered a mishap and was on the path to divorce. I'm sorry, Ray, I shouldn't dwell on this now. After all, I'm marrying the man my father approves of, the one I've loved since our first meeting. What? You loved me from the start. I've wanted you since I laid eyes on you, but I guess you already knew that, I remarked, surprised. She gave me a sweet smile and asked when I wanted to set the date. I responded that it was entirely up to her. We both agreed it should happen as soon as possible. I asked if I could start spreading the news, and she said she would do the same. We just needed to settle on a date. We settled on 2 months from then. For the next few days, I was elated. I shared the news with Amy and her husband Kenny, who were thrilled for us. I needed to inform the kids. I called their home and connected with them both through the console so I could share the news simultaneously. They both exclaimed their happiness and expressed their fondness for Angie. I assured them it was happening in a couple of months, and that they were among the first to know. When I entered Angie's office, her secretary Mary congratulated me. She informed me that Angie had already spread the news and invited everyone to the wedding reception. Mary then called Angie and beckoned me in. Angie was waiting, tears silently streaming down her face. What's wrong, Angie? I called the prison, spoke to the warden, and requested a day's leave for my dad to attend our wedding. He informed me that my dad is prohibited from leaving the prison under any circumstances. His life sentence is final. He expressed regret, but said there was nothing he could do. I'm deeply sorry, Angie. I understand how much your father's presence means to you. It's deteriorating, Ray. Despite being in remission, Dad's cancer has resurfaced. He has 3 to 6 months left. Tears welled in her eyes, and I enveloped her in my arms. Why, Lord? Why put her through this? She's a good soul. My heart ached for her. Angie, I've been buying cigarettes for your dad since I got out. It was a deal between us. I'm sorry. It's not your fault. Dad doesn't smoke anymore. He uses the packs sent to him to trade with other inmates. You didn't cause his cancer. An idea sparked in my mind, but I hesitated to share it with Angie, not wanting to extinguish her hope. I kissed her goodbye, promising to see her the next day. I skipped work and headed to the prison to meet Keeler and the warden. Keeler greeted me with a smile. "You take care of my girl, Ray. Just make her happy. She deserves better than what life's thrown her way." I pitched my idea to Keeler, met with initial resistance, but eventually secured his agreement pending the warden's approval. I bid him farewell, heading to the warden's office. The warden welcomed me. "Well, Ray, I see you're staying composed and getting hitched. Sorry about Keeler, but as a lifer, we can't release him for his daughter's wedding." "Warden, are you fully in charge here, making most decisions?" "What's your angle, Ray?" "Can we hold the wedding on the hotel premises? Use the chapel, and Keeler can walk his daughter down the aisle." "You want to marry here in prison just so her father can attend? That it?" "Yes, sir. She hasn't seen him in over 14 years, and he's on his end of the rope. We only need the chapel for the ceremony. I know weddings have happened here before." "All right, Ray. I'll arrange it. Keep it small. You can invite 3 guests besides yourselves. Let Keeler bring some fellow inmates. You'll need a prison attendant." I expressed gratitude to the warden and hurried back to Keeler. "Dave," I called him by name, and he chuckled. The warden green-lighted the plan. "I'm off to tell Angie." "Thanks, Dave. It means the world to her." He smiled. "Ray, jot down this number." I noted it down for Angie. "When you visit the bank, ask Angie to bring her birth certificate. The account is registered under her maiden name." I jotted down, expressing sympathy for Dave's illness. "Just look after my little girl, that's all I ask," Dave responded. Returning to Angie's office, she noticed my smile and inquired what was happening. "You don't mind getting married in prison?" I questioned. "What? What's this about, Ray?" I recounted my conversation with the warden, mentioning that her father would be permitted to walk her down the aisle. Tears of joy welled up in her eyes. "God, I love you, Ray." I informed her about the safety deposit box, and we proceeded to inspect its contents. "I'm Angelina Juanita Miller, and I'd like to access my safety deposit box," Angie informed the attendant, who examined her birth certificate. He escorted us to the safe deposit box, unlocked it, and exited the room. The first thing we noticed was a note from her father. "Dear Angie, if you're opening this box, it means you're either getting married or I've already passed away. I hope it's the former. In the little box is your mother's engagement ring. I know everyone wondered where it went, but I put it here for safekeeping. I want you to have it and wear it with pride. Your mother had her faults, but she loved you, and I know she would want you to have her wedding ring. There are also bonds here, totaling over $15,000 that will help pay for your wedding. I formalized them before I was sent away. When you see your brother and sister, tell them there's a box for each of them too, if they haven't gotten theirs yet. Only yours has a ring in it. Congratulations, and always be honest with your husband. With love, Daddy." Angie and I discussed our wedding plans, opting to invite her brother Brad and sister Lisa, along with my sister Amy. We planned to extend invitations to family and friends for the reception, scheduled shortly after the ceremony. Angie and Amy dedicated the following month to preparing for the event, although it incurred additional expenses due to the short notice. However, I was determined to fulfill as much of Angie's dream as possible. Amy volunteered to capture the event with her digital camera. We visited Angie's siblings, where she introduced me to them. They clarified that while they didn't harbor animosity towards their father, they disapproved of his actions. Angie elucidated the significance of the wedding and the circumstances surrounding it, leading Brad and Lisa to tears upon learning of their father's terminal condition. After agreeing to attend, Angie provided them with their bank deposit box numbers, revealing their father's unexpected provisions. On the wedding day, Angie and I drove to the prison together, accompanied by Amy and her husband, who waited in the car. Upon our arrival, I arranged for a costume for Keeler, delivered by a guard, while I donned the rented tuxedo. Amy assisted Angie with her wedding attire in another room, as Angie preferred I not see her until the ceremony. Inside the chapel, I awaited Angie's entrance alongside Brad and Lisa, who would serve as my best man and Angie's maid of honor, respectively. A prisoner played the piano, setting a solemn atmosphere, while additional prisoners, friends of Keeler Dave, were seated. The warden, accompanied by the priest, announced refreshments after the ceremony, displaying unexpected kindness. As "Here Comes the Bride" filled the chapel, everyone rose to their feet. Angie entered, escorted by her father, tears streaming down both their faces. Angie's wish had been granted. Her father would walk her down the aisle on her wedding day. Once they reached the front, the audience took their seats, leaving only the small wedding party standing. Another guard entered and shut the door. The priest inquired, "Who presents this woman to marry this man?" "Yes, sir," Dave responded proudly before taking his seat. "Angelina Juanita Miller Brady, do you accept Raymond Michael Harper as your husband?" The priest proceeded with the ceremony, posing the same question to me. We both solemnly affirmed, "To love and cherish from this day forward." It reflected our mutual commitment. Nothing would ever come between us. With challenging pasts, we were determined to make our marriage succeed. After exchanging vows, I kissed the bride. Angie then embraced and kissed her father. We adjourned to an adjoining room to chat briefly and partake in cake and punch provided by the warden. Brad and Lisa approached their father, embracing him for the first time in nearly 15 years. Tears flowed, mingling joy with remorse. Aware of their father's terminal condition, they sought to reaffirm their love for him. Amy documented moments throughout the ceremony, capturing heartfelt interactions among Dave and his children. Her photos, encompassing tears, embraces, and even some laughter, were swiftly developed and enlarged at a 24-hour photo center. Expressing gratitude to Dave and the warden for fulfilling Angie's wish, we bid them farewell. As we departed, Brad and Lisa were still engaged in conversation with their father, a heartening sight. Returning to town for the reception, we were greeted enthusiastically by all our invited guests. Kyle and Kayla eagerly embraced us upon our arrival, their excitement palpable. Entering the auditorium, we were met with jubilant cheers. Tears welled in the eyes of my parents and nearly everyone who greeted us. Angie's friends, many unfamiliar to me, also welcomed us warmly. Notably, Mary approached, offering hugs of congratulations. Around 30 minutes later, Amy arrived with the photographs. She enlarged several of them and laid them out on the table for everyone to view. Brad and Lisa stopped by to collect their families. Brad was accompanied by his wife and 2 children, while Lisa was with her husband and 3 children. They all gathered around Dave's picture, explaining to the kids that he was their grandfather. Amy informed them that she had taken 4 sets of photos, and after the reception, each family would receive 1 set to take home. There was one for Brad and Lisa, one for Angie and me, and naturally, one for Amy. I must mention how stunning Angie looked in her wedding gown. If she had wings, she would have resembled an angel sent by God. She was the most exquisite woman I had ever seen, and now she was my wife. I believe most men feel similarly about their wives. We danced, dined, and danced some more, accompanied by the clinking of glasses. Our lips were practically inseparable throughout the evening. Colleagues at work told me I was incredibly fortunate, but trust me, I didn't need to be reminded. I knew I had found something precious, and I intended to cherish it forever. For those curious, Deb and Pat were absent from our wedding. It was Angie's special day, and I wanted nothing to mar it. Witnessing her and her father walking down the aisle, seeing her brother and sister reconcile with their father, and witnessing the family coming together once more. These are moments I will never forget. Update. It's been 6 months since our wedding. Debbie and Pat tied the knot last month. I'm glad to see Debbie making a genuine effort to turn her life around. My kids report that Pat is treating them well. I inquired about Aunt Sue and Uncle Bob, and my kids informed me they relocated to another state. I transitioned to the day shift to spend more time with the kids and be home with Angie every night. Angie became pregnant with our baby 3 months after our wedding. Dave Keeler passed away. The kids visited him monthly until his passing. It was a somber moment, but we were able to share the news of Angie's pregnancy with him. We informed him it was a boy, and we planned to name him David Raymond. That brought a smile to Dave's face. Reflecting on everything, the betrayal of my cheating wife, meeting the woman of my dreams in prison, and marrying her, I realize I'm starting anew and preparing to become a father once more. Not a day passes without me thanking God for all I have. I'm grateful for the opportunity He's given Angie and me to find happiness again. That's all.
My wife cheated on me. My daughter helped cover it up, so I divorced her, got revenge, and moved on. Life's unexpected twists and turns can make that happen. To those who stayed in touch, I appreciate it. There isn't enough time for the love you send. Seasons change, and so have I. You don't need to wonder why. There's no time left. No time left for you. Picture a typical family. I'm the father, Trevor Fruiton, a 45-year-old guy with a receding hairline, in decent shape but no six-pack abs. I could stand to lose 10 lbs and prefer contacts over glasses. I still don't need reading glasses. The mother of the family, Michelle, is also 45, and has a slight tummy and a well-rounded figure, a look I prefer. She's an average woman, not strikingly beautiful or ugly, who wears glasses and insists on her full name. Then there's our 21-year-old daughter, Allie, a smart college senior who's gained some weight since her high school volleyball days. She's fiercely independent and vocal about women's rights, though she still relies on us. I'm the only one working, and finances have been tight. I didn't want Allie burdened with student debt, so she lives at home. But that doesn't mean Michelle or Allie don't enjoy nice things. I drive an old F-150 while they have fancy luxury cars. Our home has little equity, and they funded their lifestyle with home equity loans. Our neighborhood is like many suburban areas with occasional block parties. We're not particularly close to our neighbors, except for the neighbors next door, whose daughter Sally is Allie's best friend. After Allie started college, I felt lost. We had spent so much time together, and now there was a void. Even my volunteer work didn't seem to help. So one night, I asked her if she was happy. I inquired, "Michelle, are you happy?" She replied, "Happy with what?" I continued, "Your life. You've pulled away from me and lost your spark. I miss the time we used to spend with Allie. I guess I'm bored. How about us? Is there something I'm doing or not doing for you?" Michelle assured me, "We're fine. I have no complaints. Why all the questions?" I just wanted her to be happy. "Maybe you can find a counselor to help you find balance and improve your mood." I pondered her suggestion. "I'm not sure. I'll think about it." With a little chill in the air, I dropped the subject. However, 2 weeks later, Michelle started weekly sessions with a life coach. You might think that I hoped things would heat up in our bedroom, but no. We maintained our usual twice-a-week intimate schedule. Are we normal? I have no idea. I've never discussed my life in bed with anyone, and I don't pry into my friends' intimate details. Mark and Cindy, our neighbors to the south, are in their 60s. Mark is not the handiest guy, and Cindy loves to bake, which has led to a few extra pounds for me. One day I was working on Mark's sauna pump and overheard a conversation. They discussed, "Our sliding patio door is making that scratching noise again. Unless Michelle is back from her mother's, it must be Ally. I haven't seen him in a while. So I'm sitting in the backyard gazebo. I overheard Allie's conversation. She mentioned, "He's inside somewhere. His car is still here." I couldn't believe my ears as I heard her say, "God, Mom, you're outdated. Give Max a try. Sally says he's a wild one and make sure you're satisfied. Maybe this is what you need to spice things up in the bedroom. You've been complaining to our daughter about our love life? That's just not right." I know. You should think about it. By the way, Dad told me he's going hunting next weekend. I'll have Jeff invite Max over. He might be scrawny, but he's into you. Sally also mentioned that his size is just right for some fun. I was fuming, thinking, so my daughter is trying to set Michelle up with Jeff's friend. You don't have to do anything, but since you've never tried anything like that, consider experimenting with Max. I was seething, and the next pause was due to my boiling anger. The bee and her offspring are plotting to end my marriage. What did I do to deserve this? Okay, well, let me know. Love you too. Bye-bye. I was really angry. Unfortunate I didn't injure myself while fixing that frustrating pump. Things were miserable at home all week. I went out of my way to annoy Michelle and Ally. It worked, and I spent most of the week in my office or out in the garage. I also sharpened and cleaned my power tools. I didn't postpone my hunting trip, though. I had someone keep an eye on Michelle's activities. Seeing pictures of Allie, Jeff, and a skinny guy entering the house around noon on Saturday wasn't a good sign. Allie and Jeff left around 2, and the skinny guy left at 4. When I returned late Sunday, Michelle was trying to be affectionate, but I wasn't having it. While it didn't confirm anything, I noticed Michelle was sitting strangely, with her legs crossed and leaning left more than usual. She seemed a bit uncomfortable. Later in the kitchen, Allie sealed their fate by playfully slapping Michelle behind, and they both giggled with fake coughs. I felt a weight on my chest and worried that the people I was hunting with might have exposed me to something. I decided to sleep on the living room couch to avoid Michelle. In the morning, I announced that I was going to the doctor with a fake illness, claiming I had trouble breathing. My boss had no issue with me taking the day off. My plan was to pretend to have COVID, which would give me time to move forward with my exit strategy. With accumulated sick leave and vacation time, I could take enough time off to reach our traditional Christmas Eve dinner. Announcing a COVID diagnosis usually keeps people at bay. Did I actually have COVID? I wasn't sure. I was fully vaccinated and felt healthy, but my heart was broken, and I wanted to part ways with 4 people. While my lungs were fine, I checked into an extended stay hotel. There was no reason for me to live like a pauper. Michelle seemed relieved when I told her I'd be out of quarantine in time for Christmas Eve. She and her daughter called me twice a day to avoid revealing my plans. I was polite but pretended to be tired to get off the phone. I spent my time plotting revenge and making preparations, like updating wills, beneficiaries, and emergency contacts. Apartment hunting was challenging and drove home the finality of my decision to divorce Michelle and push Ally into the real world. When you're consumed by anger, all sorts of thoughts cross your mind. Most of them could land me in jail, which didn't align with my future plans. The idea of hiring an escort to trap Jeff came from watching a news story about a company that did the same to get rid of unwanted employees. It was a double-edged sword that would also hurt Ally, which, in my opinion, she deserved. Our artificial tree was lit up with blinking red, white, and green lights, and pine cones gave off a holiday scent. We gathered around the dining room table for our Christmas Eve tradition, which we had maintained for 23 years. The first 2 years were without Ally. Michelle had cooked a meal, which was now in front of us. Normally, we'd offer a short prayer of thanks, but not this time. I stood up to speak, but it wasn't going to be a cheerful toast. I began by asking Jeff about Heather, and as I did, his face lost color. Allie turned her curious gaze toward him. Allie and Jeff had been together since high school, and it seemed like they'd be together for many more years. Things were about to change, though, Jeff stammered, claiming he didn't know a Heather. I pressed further, mentioning the raven-haired beauty with ruby lips he was with last Sunday night. Jeff was as stunned as a deer in headlights. At this point, he resorted to denial, claiming he couldn't recall the name, but his words lacked conviction. I confronted him with an audio clip from my cell phone, where a voice could be heard saying, "Okay, Heather, you're awesome. Don't stop. God, I'm coming again." After turning off the recording, it was clear that the voice was Jeff's. Allie went into a rage, accusing him of deception and demanding that he leave. Before Jeff could get up, I stood behind him and pushed him back into his chair. Jeff and I prevented Ally from attacking him. I instructed Michelle to take our daughter into the other room and calm her down, explaining that I and Junior were going to have a talk. Michelle escorted Ally out of the dining room and into the kitchen. It wasn't done quietly, as Allie's string of 4-letter words echoed off the walls. It only took a few minutes to explain to Jeff how things would unfold. He was to warn Max to stay far away from me, or Max would deeply regret his existence as a man. Jeff understood where he stood and what limited options he had. From my perspective, a manila envelope moved, and Jeff agreed to do one last thing for me. I called out to the kitchen, asking Michelle to come back in. With Allie, they both looked shocked and tearful. "Let me explain how I got that recording, Jeff. Her name isn't Heather, and I don't know her real name. She's an expensive escort. I must add, I hired her to seduce you and record the encounter. There's also a video if you'd like to watch it." Allie exclaimed, "Daddy, what the hell, you hired her?" I admitted I did, sweetie. How does it feel to be betrayed? You know, stabbed in the back. Michelle made a tiny noise, and Allie's eyes briefly darted toward and away from her mother. Both women were in tears. "Jeff, do you have something to say?" I turned on the video mode of my cell phone camera. Jeff stood up, took the folder in front of him, and then addressed Michelle. "Michelle Fruiton, you've been served," he said as he handed the folder to Michelle. I wasn't sure if she would vomit or faint. She would likely do one or the other shortly after regaining her composure. The pine cones couldn't compete with the impact of Jeff handing Michelle divorce papers. While Allie and Michelle consoled each other in the master bedroom, I took charge outside. Allie's early graduation gift was loaded onto a carrier and driven away. Everything from her car was left in a trash bag on the front porch. Michelle's BMW followed soon after. But the difference was that her things were moved to a 23-year-old sedan, symbolizing our 23 years of marriage. My lawyer reminded me that I still had to provide transportation for Michelle. With our credit cards paid off and canceled, both of Allie's cards were canceled since I was the CO signer. I took another shot of bourbon. Cell phones were canceled as well. I had to give Michelle a basic phone with limited talk time and text messages. Allie received no such consideration. Both kept their iPhones with all the bells and whistles. In the garage, there was a for sale sign that I swiftly planted in the front yard with a few hits of my hammer. I couldn't actually sell the house yet since Michelle's name was on the title, but I wanted her to know what our future held. Instead of listening to the Christmas music playing in the living room by the tree, I retreated to the basement. Sitting in the dark was comforting at times, especially when I heard the commotion above me as they realized that none of their possessions were working. I was called some less than Christian names. Those names were mild compared to the ones I had been yelling in my empty hotel room while preparing for this day. "Trevor, we need to talk," was their statement. They speculated that maybe I went for a walk, noticing that my car was still at home. But my car was missing. They thought perhaps Dad had taken it, but he couldn't be driving both. They questioned the presence of an unfamiliar car in front of the house. Their phones weren't working, and they suspected I had canceled their service. They decided to go see if Cindy would let them use her phone. Calm returned to the house, but it was a tactical error on their part. I locked the entry doors. Now they were out of the house without working phones or credit cards. Both left their purses inside, so they had no identification on them. I felt no remorse when I shredded their driver's licenses. It may be petty, but I'm sure it will cause them discomfort as they try to rebuild their lives. Refilling my shot glass, I turned on the television and watched a few minutes of a cheesy feel-good special. Our situation couldn't be farther from the heartwarming story on screen. Sitting in silence seemed like a better choice. There was a commotion at the front door when Michelle and Allie returned. It was then that Michelle's daughter, whom I no longer claimed as my own, realized what was in the trash bag on the porch. Allie shrieked, "Oh my God, this is everything I had in my car. Daddy got rid of my car." Michelle wasn't buying it. He wouldn't do that. It's just not something he would do. "Well, Mom, maybe the reason your car is missing is that he sold it too. I'll be mad if he did. I love that car." With the doorbell ringing every 2 seconds, it was hard to catch all of their conversations. Michelle was furious. "Trevor, open this door right now. It's freezing out here." I shouted back at them, "Well, Mitch, the keys to your new car are in the ignition. That orange and green Malibu parked in front of the house is your new set of wheels. All your belongings from your old car have been moved over. I'm told the heater takes a while to warm up. It has a full tank of gas. Maybe you could offer your Estimax and stay at his place. He probably still has a thing for you." One yelped, "Liar," and the other said, "He knows." "Trevor, please let me explain." Michelle made a feeble attempt to extend the conversation. A few seconds of silence passed, and Michelle tried a sweeter voice. "Trevor, I know you can hear me. Say something." "Merry Christmas." "You better leave, Michi, and take that woman with you." A few minutes later, the old Malibu roared to life. It sounded like it needed a new muffler, but I wasn't surprised, as the guy practically gave me the car to get it off his hands. It wasn't getting fixed on my dime. Without any fanfare, the two traders drove away from the house. It had been ages since I heard about anyone dying from carbon monoxide poisoning due to their muffler. Maybe I'd get lucky. Probably not. About an hour later, I noticed my father-in-law's phone number lighting up my cell phone. We've never been close, but we tolerate each other. After considering whether to answer, I let it go to voicemail. "Hey Trevor, I've got a couple of upset women here. Thought you might be able to shed some light on the situation. Call me. By the way, Merry Christmas." I muted my cell and sipped some spiked eggnog. Gradually, I came down from my adrenaline rush. The blinking lights of the fake tree put me to sleep. The sun was shining on this cold Christmas morning. All the dishes were still on the dining room table, but the microwave did a good job of heating up my ham and cheesy potatoes. Ham and cheesy potatoes work any time. There were gifts waiting to be opened, but Santa left me nothing, as those gifts under the tree were meant to be opened after dinner. Had anyone even noticed I hadn't given a single gift to any of them and I didn't open theirs? Instead, I gathered my most cherished belongings. I didn't include any photos of the family. Any that I found were now scattered on the ground. It took Michelle a few days to find me at my hotel. The sun had set, and there was a bitter breeze. I left the latch on when I answered the door. I half expected another poinsettia sales pitch for a youth sports team, but it was a pale-faced Michelle without her usual makeup or done-up hair. Michelle pleaded, "Trevor, please don't close the door." I didn't close it as I replied, "What do you want, Michi?" she asked, a chance to explain. "Can I come in?" I firmly responded, "No." She continued, "Please, Trevor, your neighbors don't need to hear this." I replied, "What part of no don't you understand? I'd be happy to explain it to you." Michelle sighed. "Okay, let me start by saying how sorry I am. I can't explain my actions." I asked, "What actions are you talking about, Michi? Please." She urged, "Trevor, not out here. Let me come in and talk about it." She revealed softly, having closeness with Max. I reacted, "You had something with Max? Well, don't that beat all?" Her eyes widened as I continued. "You didn't know?" She admitted, "I suspected, but now it's confirmed. Actions have consequences." "Wait, you were going to divorce me without any proof?" I replied. "Guessed right, didn't I? Have you found an attorney yet?" She responded, "I'm working on it, but we don't need a divorce. I'll do anything you want to save our marriage." I said, "A little late for that. Why didn't you decide to do anything to save our marriage a month ago?" "I know why. It's because you're selfish and think you're above consequences. You thought you could do whatever you wanted without repercussions. Did you tell me immediately? A day later? A week later? How many others have there been?" Michelle recoiled at the venom in my voice. "That was the only time. You have to believe me. One stupid decision shouldn't doom our marriage." I pressed, "Which stupid decision?" I count many. Planning to cheat might get you a reprieve. Cheating is a deal breaker. Hiding your cheating ensured no chance of reconciliation. Worst of all was involving your daughter, as I want nothing to do with her anymore. This is all on you. If you had kept your bedroom matters private, she would have never been involved. I hate you." Some of the neighbors were getting their kicks watching this drama unfold. I told her, Trevor, I said I'm sorry. How can I make this up to you? You can't. I hope I'm better off without you. Maybe I will be, maybe I won't. But it's on my terms. Divorce your cheating self and move on, understand? Please, Trevor, I know you're hurting, angry, but please don't do anything for a couple of weeks. It was just one afternoon. What can I do to convince you? I replied, just leave and never bother me again. Now, if you'll excuse me, halftime is over and the bowl game is starting again. Thanks for stopping by, not. I closed the door. Michelle knocked and begged softly, but my noise-canceling headphones did their job. I don't know how long it lasted, but she wasn't there in the morning. 11 months later, I sat in my one-bedroom apartment, continuing the Christmas Eve tradition. Alone by choice, I prepared a simple meal that I cooked myself after getting the hang of cooking. They say you get stabbed in the back, but in reality, it shattered my heart, ego, and confidence. My self-respect, however, remained intact. Many nights I wondered if I overreacted. Not once did I agree with that thought. I became disposable, so I left. Case closed. My time in the limbo of divorce left me feeling defeated. I was often irritable, and my boss had to reprimand me for snapping at coworkers. As time passed, I withdrew from social life and became a recluse. My CO workers learned to keep their distance, and I focused on doing my job well. I skipped company parties. Friends attempted to set me up on dates, but I turned them down one by one, and eventually they stopped calling. My self-pity seemed never-ending. I took up running, and the sight of my earbuds discouraged people from approaching me. Between my new hobby and cooking for myself, I needed to put on some weight since none of my old clothes fit. Occasionally, a CO worker would compliment my appearance, but it rarely went beyond that. The divorce proceedings stretched out for 9 months, and our house sold quickly. Instead of monthly support, Michelle received a substantial share of the proceeds from the sale. Allie and Jeff went their separate ways, with Jeff blaming me for setting him up with Heather. It's always someone else's fault. I wasn't there with Heather, he was, and he was weak. Like most men his age, a seductive woman can easily lead them astray. As for Allie, she left me angry voicemails, but I never returned her calls. Maybe someday I'll answer, but I wouldn't bet on it. I neither received an invitation to her graduation nor attended it. The situation was particularly challenging for Michelle, as she hadn't held a full-time job since our marriage. My attorney prolonged the financial matters as much as possible. Once the house finally sold, I repaid all the money the court ruled she should have been receiving as maintenance. And now her comfortable lifestyle was gone. The same applied to mine. During some of the attorney conferences, Michelle tried to convince me that she had been incredibly foolish, but I remained stoic, which led to a few tears. Hate is a powerful emotion, and I couldn't seem to control mine. 12 months later, we continued the Christmas Eve tradition in my apartment. Macy, a friend who had been through a similar experience, joined me. No, we weren't in a romantic relationship. I wasn't ready for that yet. After we finished cleaning up the dishes, Macy led me to the middle of the living room, and we danced closely. At times, I missed the warmth of a willing woman against me. But after about 10 songs, Macy wiped away a tear and left. We were both damaged goods. Allie's tone in the voice messages she left about once a month changed. She sounded apologetic, but I never returned her calls. My mother accidentally revealed that Michelle had moved in with someone new. I was surprised that my reaction was mostly indifference. I started making small talk with people again. Former CO workers avoided me, and new ones thought I was weird. Making friends was challenging, but I managed to bridge the gap with Macy, and we remained friends. In late January, I received a letter from Allie. I debated whether to open it, but curiosity won. The letter contained a short note and a selfie. Daddy, I'm sorry that I did you wrong. As you can see in the picture, I'm pregnant. I was wondering if you could find it in your heart to include a grandchild in your life. If not, I understand. Love, Allie. The return address was a few counties over, and there was no mention of a husband in the picture. I felt torn. I resented what she had done to my life, but I had always wanted grandchildren. It would be a few weeks before I responded. In the meantime, Macy and I parted ways. We both knew we were only there for each other to lean on. She decided to move far away and start over. With a few lingering hugs, she left my life. To keep from going crazy, I took up pickleball at the rec center. It's similar to tennis, but with different rules. Eventually, I played with people of similar abilities, which felt like junior high school. During one game, I accidentally hit Shannon, one of the players, and her friends teased her, suggesting I should kiss it to make it better. I blew her some kisses, and as we were heading out, she asked if I could buy her a soft drink. She said I was very quiet and shy. We walked to a nearby Jamba Juice and continued chatting. We learned about each other, and Shannon was a great conversationalist, unlike me. She eventually asked if I was seeing someone, and I admitted I wasn't sure if I ever would again. Shannon inquired about my previous relationship. Did she die or leave you? I responded, she cheated on me and I either couldn't or wouldn't accept it. It's been a few years and, well, I guess I'm not over it. Shannon then asked, what about you? Are you dating anyone? I replied, no one. She seemed surprised. Really? I elaborated, I go on dates, but that's about it. When was the last time you went on a date? Shannon shared, well, I haven't been on a proper date since we separated. I've had people over for dinner, but that's it. I asked, when did your marriage end? She told me that was December, 26 months ago. Pretty sad, isn't it? I reassured her, not really. When I was dumped for a younger woman, it took me a couple of years to regain the confidence to try again. This entire conversation was making my palms sweaty. Shannon noticed. Let's change the subject, I suggested. Why did you start playing pickleball? Shannon explained, my self-pity was getting tiresome, so I thought I needed something new to do. I shared, that's how I got into it too. My friends convinced me, and I've come to enjoy it. How about you? Shannon said, yeah, I got a paddle and playing is helping me come out of my shell. Well, I have to run. See you tomorrow? I'm playing at 4 p.m. I replied, sure, nice chatting with you, Shannon. She offered some encouragement. You too, Trevor. Hang in there. Things will only get better. That evening, I felt good enough about myself to respond to Allie. Allie, I'm willing to try. You and I will never be close, but I'd like to at least meet my grandchild. Please let me know when the time is right. Under no circumstances will I be in the same room as your mother. Mr. Fruin, as Allie showed in the selfie, I estimated a May or June delivery date. I'm not sure if Allie received my response, as I haven't received another letter from her. The next day at pickleball, Shannon was quite flirtatious, as were a few other ladies. It felt good. After hitting a particularly good shot, Shannon said, you know, Trevor, you look really good in that shirt. I bet you look even better out of it. The women giggled as my face turned red. Funny you should say that, Shannon. I was thinking that you looked really good in those yoga pants. I bet you'd look even better out of them too, I responded. There was hysterical laughter as Shannon turned bright red. Then the ladies started chanting, take them off, or take them off, take them off. I obliged and took my shirt off. Shannon shook her head vigorously while wagging her finger at me as if I was in trouble. A few of the ladies whistled as I put my shirt back on. Shannon mouthed, you're terrible, at me. I blew her a kiss. After the games, there was some light-hearted banter among the ladies, with one of them joking about looking great out of yoga pants. Shannon impatiently waited her turn. I engaged in a friendly conversation, and eventually Shannon asked if I'd buy her a soft drink. I responded, I was just about to ask you. Shannon playfully remarked, nice yoga pants, huh? Pretty proud of yourself, aren't you? As we enjoyed our drinks, I mustered the courage to ask Shannon out for dinner and a movie. Fearing rejection, I was relieved when she thankfully agreed. Having been out of the dating scene for over 27 years, I felt clueless, awkward, and scared. Initially, it was hard, but with time, I began to relax, and my previous upbeat personality started to emerge. After several dates, Shannon suggested I spend the night. One evening, Shannon surprised me with a personal question. She asked, who were you thinking of when we were intimate? I had to pause and appreciate her. You, I replied. I wondered what you saw in a person like me. I see a mirror reflection, Shannon said with a smile. Our passionate connection grew, and we became more intimate with time. Shannon eventually introduced me to her family and grandchildren, which was initially awkward due to their protective nature. However, as time passed, they accepted me. In early June, Shannon cuddled up to me in bed and suggested celebrating our closeness. As the moment grew more passionate, I realized what she meant, and I shared my knowledge of Allie giving birth to a girl 2 days ago. Our passions flared briefly, and then we made love for an extended period. The next day, I sent flowers to Allie to acknowledge her new motherhood. A day later, I received an overnight letter from Allie expressing her sincere apologies and the desire to reconnect with me. She mentioned her understanding of the lessons I had tried to teach her and the changes she had undergone. She also mentioned her daughter Bonnie and the possibility of us reuniting. I shared the letter with Shannon, who found Allie's words sincere and asked me what I intended to do. I expressed my concern about the impact on my relationship with Shannon and received a warm hug and a loving kiss in response. Shannon emphasized the need to let go of the past so that our relationship could flourish. With Shannon by my side, I knocked on Allie's door, surprising her. We shared affectionate cheek hugs and entered her apartment. I held Bonnie, and she didn't cry, reminding me of how small baby hands and feet are. Shannon brought up Allie's marital status, and Allie explained that Bonnie's father was reluctant to commit. Throughout the evening, Allie and I kept our distance. Before leaving, Shannon urged me to express my love to Allie, and I returned to Allie's apartment to give her a hug and tell her that I still loved her. 6 months and a few weeks later, the traditional Christmas Eve dinner was hosted in my apartment, with Shannon, Allie, and me holding Bonnie. I delivered the Christmas blessing, and we all dined and exchanged gifts. Shannon and I spent the night at her house, marking a change in our relationship. 12 months later, we celebrated Christmas Eve at Shannon's house. Life had moved forward, and I had found contentment in my life's new chapter.
My spouse and I are employed at the same marketing firm. Lucy holds the title of customer ambassador, though the specifics of her role remain elusive. I'm Mark, leading the IT team. Things were going smoothly. We were both employed, and Happy had just finished renovating our rundown house. We have two lovely children, Emma, 13, and Daniel, 11. We live near our families and have close friendships. Both over 30, we complement each other well, though she surpasses me in looks, standing at 1.75 meters with long blonde hair and captivating blue eyes. Lucy claims her family resides in Sweden, and she embodies a slim Scandinavian appearance. Energetic and vibrant, she never seems to stand still. I stand at 7.5 centimeters tall with sandy hair and prefer endurance sports like cycling and running, resulting in a slim, physically fit physique, albeit not overtly athletic. I was taken aback when invited to a long weekend on a private island owned by one of our firm's clients. Our CEO, Jack Edwards, explained that he, along with his wife Margaret, several directors, and their partners would attend. Lucy was also invited due to her role as the client's main contact. It seemed I was there for number crunching, but hey, don't question a good opportunity. Jack emphasized the client's wealth and potential significance to our firm, mentioning an early Friday departure and Monday return on a private charter with all expenses covered. Lucy seemed well informed, having worked closely with the client for months and eagerly anticipating the free weekend. Although I inquired about the plans, she didn't have much information, so I asked about the client. Lucy explained that his name was William Fellows, in his mid-40s, exuding confidence and inheriting a family fortune. She seemed somewhat fascinated, describing him as assertive and reserved. Great, I thought to myself, he sounds like an arrogant idiot. But I decided to keep that observation to myself until the weekend. 2 weeks later, on a Friday morning, we found ourselves aboard a private charter plane. I must admit I was impressed. If the island belonged to him, it must be quite luxurious. I wasn't sure what to expect, but it appeared vast, perhaps 5 miles long and a couple of miles wide. As we approached for landing, it resembled a 5-star resort, with main buildings positioned behind a crescent-shaped white sandy beach. Lucy was thrilled, and the others shared her excitement. After settling into our rooms, we joined our host for lunch on the veranda overlooking the bay. Though I was initially wary, William seemed affable, and Lucy even downplayed his appearance, comparing him to George Clooney. He thanked us for coming and encouraged us to relax. We conversed with other couples from our firm and met a striking brunette named Charlotte, whom I assumed was William's companion for the weekend. Apart from the waitstaff, there was a man who appeared to be a security guard, lingering in the background. I wondered what threats William faced, requiring protection even on a secluded island. William greeted Lucy warmly, and they seemed at ease in each other's company. She, along with the others, appeared to heed his words, likely due to his generosity as a host and his importance as our firm's most valuable client. We had an excellent afternoon snorkeling, kayaking, and simply lounging around in the bay. Refreshments and food were readily available. Later, we all gathered for dinner with the group, enjoying a laid-back and amiable atmosphere as we engaged in conversations in small groups. Charlotte approached us, introducing herself warmly and sharing anecdotes about her upbringing in England. Despite giving the impression of coming from a well-off family, she seemed genuinely pleasant. I pondered whether she was a model or perhaps didn't have a need to work. To my surprise, she displayed flirtatious behavior toward me, even in Lucy's presence. I skillfully evaded her advances, attributing it to her overly friendly nature. With no childcare responsibilities and the serene setting, it was an ideal setup for a romantic evening. Lucy was especially affectionate, and our lovemaking was passionate. She professed her love for me repeatedly, making it one of the most memorable nights in a while. Perhaps there was merit to the notion of a love island after all. I hoped for a repeat the following morning, but Lucy promptly got ready for breakfast, prompting me to finally get out of bed and join her. As she conversed with Jack and William, I wondered if work matters were on their minds, given their slightly tense demeanor. Maybe William was exploiting the weekend to discuss work-related issues. Approaching them, the conversation appeared to falter briefly, and after a quick snack, we and the others continued to enjoy another delightful day by the pool. On Saturday, we ventured out for dinner, and I couldn't help but notice Lucy's enhanced attire. She looked stunning in a red satin evening dress and high heels. Following dinner, William requested a few minutes of our time. We agreed and followed him into the office, accompanied by a security guard. William took a seat in a plush leather chair while I settled onto the sofa opposite Lucy, observing her slight distance from me. After a prolonged pause, William mentioned that he had a proposition for Mark, stating it was of a personal nature. Mark responded affirmatively, maintaining composure despite feeling completely astonished. William elaborated, expressing his enjoyment of working with Lucy and the bond they had developed over the past few months. He hinted at a proposal, expressing his desire to spend the remainder of the weekend with Lucy. He offered compensation for her time away from me, proposing to transfer $100,000 into our joint account. I chuckled, assuming it was a jest, and couldn't resist making a quip about his generosity compared to a famous movie offer. However, the room fell silent, with no one joining in the laughter. William continued, "Just like in any other business, I'm open to negotiating the price to get what I desire. Plus, Charlotte will be in a tough spot, and I'd appreciate it if you'd agree to entertain her." I glanced at Lucy, anticipating a smile, but instead she looked concerned. "This isn't a joke, Mark," she said firmly. "William invited me to join him, and I think we should seriously consider this offer." I felt the urge to lash out, but before I could react, the guard was already near. I was taken aback by how swiftly he moved. William pressed on, saying, "I assure you, your wife fully supports this idea. What damage could come from it? We'll all have a great time, and you'll earn a substantial sum of money." Turning to Lucy, I remarked, "Perhaps the difference in price is because Demi Moore didn't settle for that amount." Lucy winced at my comment, but wisely chose to remain silent. My mind raced as I struggled to think clearly, my breathing growing labored. I glanced at the guard, whose demeanor had shifted entirely. He appeared wary, focusing intently on my movements, and with good reason, given my strong desire to strike William. "What's your name?" I asked, my voice strained. "Ex-military, judging by your demeanor. You must deal with this sort of thing often." "Shane, sir," he replied calmly. "I can't comment on this matter, and if you were to attack your boss, I reckon I could handle you." Shane flashed a smile. "Perhaps just to prevent you from doing so, sir." Turning back to William, I retorted, "It's fortunate you brought him along. Otherwise, I might have knocked you senseless." William remained unfazed. "Let's not rush, Mark. Much depends on this." Lucy interjected, urging me to consider. "Think about it, Mark. Just a few days, and money could change our lives forever." I was devastated. It was evident that Lucy was on board and even instigated this plan. "Tell me, dear," I pressed, "did the offer of money sway you to agree to this?" With no response from Lucy, I continued, "I suspect Charlotte was offered as an added incentive. Who is she? A fancy woman?" William responded, "Charlotte is a close personal friend of mine. In addition to her wealth, she's an elite escort who only takes contracts that pique her interest. Rest assured, you'll have an extraordinary experience with her." Lucy winced again, but offered no defense. "Well, William," I retorted, "you can take your money and shove it up your perfumed rear end." At that moment, Lucy spoke up, revealing her true intentions. She explained to me that it was her decision, and emphasized that it was merely about physical lovemaking. She mentioned that both she and William were curious about exploring it with others, assuring me that their connection was limited to mutual liking and wouldn't diminish our love for each other. Lucy expressed confidence that both Charlotte and I would enjoy the experience. Stunned by her words, I gradually understood the gravity of the situation. I expressed to my dear wife that my desire for exclusivity was profound and meant more than she might realize. I accused her of betrayal and conspiracy behind my back, declaring that I could never trust her again if she was willing to engage in such behavior once. Lucy quickly responded, claiming that I was overreacting. She asserted that she had informed me about her intentions and insisted on her honesty. She mentioned that the affair would occur, but assured me of her return, promising full devotion afterward. Lucy appealed to my love for her, urging me to permit her this one indulgence. She pointed out potential benefits such as financial gain, vacations, and family experiences. Lucy warned against using our children as an excuse and rejected the idea that money motivated her, accusing me of harboring a desire for the affair. She concluded by suggesting that my honesty would only matter if we reached agreements together, implying that I was aligned with William, whom she disparaged as an arrogant idiot. Lucy continued, stating that she believed the mention of money and Charlotte was only because she hadn't expected me to agree. She admitted that she still didn't agree, even with the offer of money. She confessed that she wanted to experience something different and was drawn to William, but she believed it shouldn't injure our relationship. I expressed my reluctance to change and questioned whether she believed this course of action was superior. I inquired if she had already made her decision, even going as far as dressing for the occasion. She warned me not to resist, indicating that I wouldn't appreciate the consequences. Confused, I asked for clarification on what she meant. She replied, suggesting that I wouldn't benefit from fighting against her wishes or seeking a divorce, as it would result in losing everything. She warned me that my home, children, and even my job would be endangered if I resisted, implying that accepting the situation would make everything easier. She mentioned seeing me the next day and assured me of her love and exclusivity. Feeling suffocated, I knew I had to leave before losing control. Struggling to breathe, I stood up and made my way to the door. Despite Lucy calling my name, I continued moving. In the hallway, Charlotte approached and embraced me, offering reassurance. I turned to her, acknowledging her presence. "Who are you, a damn consolation prize?" She walked away confidently. I continued walking and eventually reached outside, but I didn't feel well. I heard footsteps behind me and was disappointed to see it was Shane, not Lucy. "Listen, Shane, you just need to leave me alone." "I'd love to, but I need to ensure you don't do anything rash. Do you have any thoughts?" "Because I'm out of ideas." "Mark, you don't look too good. Just sit against the wall, pull your knees up, and focus on taking long, slow breaths." Feeling weak, I lacked the strength to argue. It felt like an eternity, but it was probably only a few minutes before I calmed down. I noticed Shane sitting beside me. "Thanks. I might have had an anxiety or panic attack. You looked pretty pale, but now you seem better." "So, Shane, any ideas on how to get out of this mess?" Shane replied, "Honestly, you can't leave the island today. There are no boats, and the plane and pilot left for another charter. You could try radioing for help, but a cheating wife isn't exactly an emergency." "I'm relieved you see her as unfaithful. She doesn't seem to grasp it, and I'm starting to doubt myself. What should I do? I can't even confront him now because of you." "Yes, sorry about that. I'd step aside, but it'd ruin my career." After a pause, Shane suggested, "Think about your next move and come up with a plan. Whatever you decide can wait until Monday. It's like in the Army. Strategize. Keep quiet about your intentions." The problem is I'm clueless about what to do. They seem to have everything figured out, and I'll just have to endure tomorrow and Monday while you babysit me. After a pause, Shane continued, "There's a cargo ship arriving early Monday. You could hitch a ride if you want to avoid the plane. With everyone else leaving, they can't stop you. No one wants to be accused of kidnapping. I can even accompany you. This deal is losing its appeal. I don't like being on the wrong side, even if it's well-paying." "Okay, that's helpful. I just need to get through tomorrow. How about we go hiking around the island tomorrow morning to distract you, and think about Charlotte. She seems nice, and you've got nothing to lose. If you don't want to go back, you can crash in one of the booths tonight." "No, I think our room is empty. I'll head back there. Maybe she'll change her mind." Of course she didn't. Surprisingly, I fell asleep, probably from exhaustion. The next morning, I changed into my workout clothes and hurried downstairs, hoping to avoid everyone and go on my hike with Shane. Unfortunately, the dining room fell silent as soon as I entered. I quickly grabbed some fruit and heard murmurs of reassurance that everything would be fine. Then CFO John Cousins approached with his wife. "Look, Mark, we've all been through this. Just go with it. It's not personal. He dallies with other wives, then moves on, and he's very generous." When he uttered those words, I noticed his wife's neck flush red. In that moment, Lucy and William emerged. She appeared utterly pleased with herself, radiant, I'd say, until she caught sight of me. Her smile faded. She released that idiot's hand and approached me, intending to kiss or hug. I held her at arm's length and surveyed the room. God, I thought, what a damn idiot. Everyone knew what would happen before the weekend even started. What an absolute fool I was. I stepped out. Lucy implored, "Please stay, Mark. Let's chat with the group and have another good day together." Scanning the room again, I found all eyes fixed on me, some anticipating, others amused by the scene. "No, he paid for you and can keep you. But before I go, I need to address the group. I believe this weekend has been planned for some time, and you all have been in on it, so it's only fair that you hear me out." All members of the group exchanged shocked looks, nervously glancing at each other. "Jack and Margaret, I wouldn't have come this weekend if it weren't for you. I never imagined you'd be involved in something so vile. You know and condone what he does, like some sick voyeur fan club. I hope you enjoyed keeping me in the dark." I noticed their awkward movements. This clearly wasn't part of their plan. I thought we were friends, and their efforts to make me feel at home so they could orchestrate everything was a nice touch. And Bill, you're wrong. This is deeply personal. So thanks for your role in wrecking my marriage. The fact that they're willing to leverage my children is frankly disgusting. I won't let anyone threaten my kids." Lucy interjected, "You're overreacting. It was just closeness, a one-time adventure. I told you I love—" I interrupted her, commenting on what I perceived as the initial phase of her defense strategy. I mentioned that I was aware she had planned my reaction, referring to her as Captain Ducker, and expressed curiosity about her intentions. I outlined Phase A as remaining in the current situation and being compelled to accept what had happened while trying to normalize everything. I mentioned the belief that I shouldn't overreact, be rude, or act childish, and acknowledged the need for personal growth, attributing any resistance to my ego. Despite knowing it wouldn't succeed, I described this as part of the process to soften my stance. Moving on to Phase B, I proposed that after the weekend I would take charge. I suggested increasing physical lovemaking, perhaps trying something new, and leveraging our connection to improve our relationship. I hinted that she may have discussed seducing me, and affectionately urged her not to let my feelings of loss linger for too long. I described Lucy's nervous glance at William, indicating that my comment had affected her deeply. She mentioned the money he had offered and suggested using my earnings from prostitution to take the children to Disneyland, causing discomfort among some present. She outlined a potential Phase B if our conflict persisted, referring to a seed planted the previous night, suggesting that allowing her desires was a test of my love. She acknowledged my 15 years of devotion and emphasized that this was just one night for me. She admitted that it might weaken her resolve, but questioned what she would gain after 15 years of devotion if treated poorly. She expressed doubt about the effectiveness of the plan and suggested I give her time to cool down. She predicted that in about a week or two, I would likely be found drowning my sorrows at a bar, followed by her seeking forgiveness, which she referred to as Phase D. She questioned whether I truly regretted my actions and realized the depth of the hurt caused. She speculated that I wouldn't have pursued it if aware of the pain it would cause. She suggested I would profess love, beg, and cry, but expressed doubt about the effectiveness of this approach due to my public displays of affection with William. She concluded by stating that Phase D wouldn't work and hinted at the necessity of a backup plan. She referred to Phase D as threats, suggesting that she would take all the money, the house, and turn the children against me. She hinted at the possibility of losing my job and speculated about William providing top-notch lawyers for her. She described potential consequences of me ending up sad, broke, and alone, even suggesting the threat of moving in with him and living happily ever after with our kids. This last statement prompted a reaction from William, indicating his reluctance to such an idea. Lucy finally found her voice. "It's not such a big problem," she began. "Why don't we just relax and give ourselves time to think?" "This is Phase A, Lucy. We've been through this," I said firmly. "So, why don't we save everyone time and move on to the end result?" That's what I pondered last night, and my conclusion is that everyone, including the kids, would be better off if we divorced. It's much healthier than living in an unhappy home. In the end, it was clear that neither of us could find happiness in the midst of this turmoil. I asserted that despite any attempts to prevent me from seeing my children, I knew I was a good father, and ultimately, that's what mattered. I expressed doubts about receiving support from her family and friends once they learned of her actions. Money was never my priority. It had always been about her. There was a moment of stunned silence among everyone present as I questioned if anyone had more tricks up their sleeves or if I had missed anything. When there was no response, I addressed Jack, stating that he could keep his job, but I would see him in court for wrongful termination, as my job depended on having my wife as a client, which seemed to be the underlying reason for the situation. With that, I left, and the room fell silent. Shane followed me as usual. As we exited, Shane chuckled. "Well played. Looks like you took to heart the advice of keeping the plan to yourself." I couldn't help but smile. "Yeah, seems I botched that idea." Shane actually laughed as we left the building. "Good thing you stuck to civilian life. You'd never have cut it in the army anyway. Let's go." Shane grabbed his backpack and set off at a leisurely pace up the coast. After a mile, I struggled to keep up and began to wonder if it was a mistake. I heard him shout something from ahead about how physical exertion is a great way to distract from mental anguish. My burning muscles and lungs seemed to agree. The scenery was awe-inspiring, and Shane proved to be excellent company. he transitioned from inquiring about me to sharing amusing anecdotes from his days in the British Army. We spent hours exploring the island's northern region, tracing the coastline and ascending to a central peak. When Shane proposed jogging downhill for our return, I struggled to keep pace, suspecting he slowed down either to assist or tease me, depending on one's perspective. By noon, we were back, and while I was gasping for breath, Shane, a former physical education instructor, assured me of my decent fitness level. Feeling drained, I made my way to my room, finding Lucy absent, which led me to wonder if she was earning extra money. After a refreshing shower, hunger drove me to the dining room in search of sustenance, only to be disappointed yet again by the presence of William and Lucy. Shane lingered in the background, looking remarkably fresh and dapper in a suit. William, in his usual confident manner, began to address me. "Mark, my dear friend, I believe we started off on the wrong foot, and I want to extend my apologies. I've never encountered issues like this in my past relationships, and I certainly didn't intend to jeopardize your marriage." "It's too late," I replied bluntly. "You've completed the deed. I wish to retract my request to spend tonight with your wife and increase the compensation." With these words, William handed me a document. I opened it and found a check for $250,000. I glanced at Lucy, who seemed to be crying, and I couldn't resist commenting. "You must have been quite skilled to earn that much, darling." Lucy's eyes sparked with anger. "That's beside the point. We made a dreadful mistake, and we're trying to fix it. William acted like a gentleman and genuinely cared about your reaction." I chuckled at this notion. "What's your notion of an ideal gentleman? Did he express gratitude after lovemaking?" "There's no need for jesting, Mark. This was simply a misjudgment on our part. We misjudged your response. It was a once-in-a-lifetime experience for both of us. You should appreciate Lucy's sacrifice to offer you and your children a better life." I questioned whether their actions were simply a misjudgment, expressing my clear opposition to their plan, which they disregarded. I pointed out that they could have stopped at any moment, but chose to continue until satisfying themselves. I tore up the check, sparing them from disgrace, but emphasized that the betrayal remained, doubting it could be repaired this time. Lucy began crying as I addressed them, questioning their motives, whether it was about control or the thrill of pursuing another man's wife, and criticizing their behavior as pathetic. I highlighted William's age and compared his actions to that of a child taking toys just because he could, suggesting that he should be engaging in more meaningful pursuits. In response, William laughed, stating his oversight of an international corporation and his charitable donations. He criticized my management of the corporation and questioned my involvement in charity work, implying that I was too self-absorbed and preoccupied with manipulating lives to genuinely help others. He suggested that I derived pleasure from humiliating others, as evidenced by the way I planned the weekend. I informed Lucy that William's interest in her wasn't solely exclusive, as he was involved with every board member's wife, so she was just one among many. I then addressed William directly, urging him to mature and seek genuine relationships, suggesting that he use his wealth for good and change his unpleasant demeanor. This seemed to cause him to falter in his speech and appear uncertain for the first time. I then instructed Shane to remove the objectionable matter from my sight before I took action. I noticed Shane conceal a slight smile before addressing Fellowes. "I believe it's time for us to depart, sir, before your safety becomes a concern." After their departure, I grabbed a snack and headed to the beach, seeking to avoid the others. Just when I thought I was alone, I spotted Charlotte reclining in a hammock, engrossed in reading. If she was beautiful before, her smile now made her truly radiant. I approached her. "Apologies for last night." Before I could say more, she responded,
"No need for apologies. I was certain you'd accept the offer. If I had known, I wouldn't have approached you. Your reaction is completely understandable, and your speech at breakfast was exceptional."
I couldn't agree more. When you left, Lucy broke into tears, and I've never seen William appear so embarrassed. I relished every moment. "Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that, considering your circumstances," I replied. "Thank you. It's appreciated. I'm relieved things are becoming clearer. I'm tired of being told this is nonsense. You see, William is clueless about how to handle you. He's never faced rejection before and isn't accustomed to
Ethical dilemmas. Has he already offered you more money?"
"Yes, just before I came down. $250,000. What a fool. I advised him against it, but he's accustomed to paying his way until he gets what he desires. He'll face consequences for this, both professionally and personally." Charlotte was receptive and listened attentively as I discussed my marriage and children. Clearly intelligent and well-educated, she expressed surprise at Lucy's actions, given our seemingly content marriage, suggesting there might have been some discontent or an open arrangement between us. I pondered it. No, it's merely an unexpected betrayal. She seems entirely captivated by this man. He has a certain allure for women. It's charming, but the depth isn't substantial if you catch my drift. We conversed further, and I felt somewhat relieved. You truly care for her. Your response to the proposals and at breakfast must be devastating. I shrugged. I regret my involvement in this. It's not your fault. I just need to endure one more night, then perhaps I can escape. She smiled again, becoming a pleasant distraction. Well, perhaps I can assist with this. Dinner surprised everyone when I joined. Lucy wasn't seated next to William anymore. Dinner proceeded normally, though I brushed off Lucy's attempts at conversation. When Lucy suggested going to bed early, I politely declined, citing other plans. She looked embarrassed, which heightened when Charlotte hugged me as I rose from the table. We left together, walking down to the cabins on the beach. Initially, the plan was just to depart together and give Lucy a taste of her own medicine. But holding Charlotte felt right, really right. And when we kissed, some of the disappointment from the past 24 hours faded away. I wrestled with maintaining my morals, my sense of right and wrong. Then I glanced at her. I suppose Lucy wanted me to be more adaptable. And as far as I'm concerned, Lucy has already broken our marriage vows. I had an exceptional night with Charlotte. It wasn't merely her physical beauty, she exuded a serene allure. Every gesture seemed calculated and flawlessly executed. She truly mastered her allure. Surprisingly, thoughts of Lucy didn't cross my mind, nor did I feel guilty. The painful image of Lucy with William erased any hint of remorse. I enjoyed myself. After a boat taxi to the airport and the usual flight home, I collected the kids and arranged their weekend as best I could. I fabricated a vague story about a disagreement between their mother and me, but suggested we have dinner together. As Lucy entered the house, hauling our heavy suitcase, the children dashed upstairs shouting, "Hi, Mom!" Lucy smiled. "Dinner sounds good. Give me a few minutes to freshen up." "I'd prefer if you didn't, Lucy. Like you said, I'm uncertain how much time I'll have with them. So I'd rather we go alone, Lucy."
Upon meeting William, I felt an immediate connection. He exuded charm, confidence, and strength, reminiscent of old movie characters. It was odd that later, in Mark's presence, he seemed different. Flirting led to lunch, then dinner. It was exhilarating, dizzying even. After dinner, his goodnight kiss nearly melted me, but I was resolute not to cheat and informed him as such. William mentioned his past open relationships, making me wonder if Mark might be open to it. When he proposed the idea, I thought the money would justify it. Jack supported me, and we began planning for the weekend. The weekend started off wonderfully. I had a fantastic time with Mark and nearly abandoned the entire plan. If only I could. William assured me everything would be fine and advised Mark to relax. Both he and Jack anticipated Mark rejecting the idea, but suggested giving him time to calm down. Mark's reaction was completely unexpected and upended our plans. The most surprising thing was his apparent illness. Although I wanted to chase after him, William reassured me that everything would be okay. He arranged to meet Ed Charlotte, so when he didn't return, I assumed he stayed with her. I felt relieved. After waiting for months, I eagerly anticipated spending time with William. The moment he kissed me, I knew I would succeed. He led me to his bedroom, and even before I could undress, I was already filled with anticipation. William stood before me and undressed me delicately, treating me like a prized possession. I felt incredibly special. Despite his age, he was remarkably fit, and I wasn't disappointed by his physique or his masculinity. When I reached out to him, William pulled back and began kissing my entire body, exploring every inch. Gradually, he assessed my reactions and responded, seemingly understanding my desires perfectly. My first climax came quickly, thanks to his skillful touch. Upon regaining awareness, he rose and initiated a passionate kiss. His expertise in lovemaking left me in awe as waves of sensation enveloped my body. I was now completely consumed by desire as he intensified his rhythm. As the next climax approached, William kept pace with me. Eventually, we both found solace in each other's embrace. In the middle of the night, confusion engulfed me as I mistakenly believed I was with Mark, only to be startled by another man beside me. Feelings of guilt and concern for Mark's whereabouts flooded my mind. Evidently, I had disturbed William, prompting him to wake and reassure me with a kiss, alleviating my guilt. The following morning, as I attended to my morning routine, William approached me from behind, exuding insatiable desire. Returning to bed, we held hands before I took charge, straddling him, enraptured by the passion and ecstasy reflected in his expression. Once again, our passion culminated in a final climax, fulfilling my every expectation and leaving me elated. Thanking William for the wonderful night, it felt natural to intertwine our hands as we descended the stairs to the dining room, eagerly anticipating another night together. However, when I glanced at Mark, everything unraveled. Swallowing my panic, Mark's explosive outburst disrupted everything. It became evident that he hadn't slept with Charlotte. Despite my preparations for his departure, I was unprepared for his unexpected anger. His cold rage was unsettling as he systematically dismantled my arguments with logical precision. Despite William's support, Mark's swift rebuttal left me wavering. After his departure, I collapsed into tears, and for the first time, William appeared uncertain. Upon regaining consciousness, I attempted to locate him to no avail. Jack and William then suggested halting everything by offering more money. When we later presented Mark with this offer, I was astonished by the outcome. William's once commanding presence had dwindled so significantly that he appeared trivial. Previously, his authority was such that I unquestioningly accepted his every word, but now it was undermined to the extreme. Despite his assurance that we could enjoy ourselves without jeopardizing my marriage, this plan disintegrated, leaving me uncertain about everything. I then erupted into an irrational fury, assuming I would extend my stay on the island for enjoyment. However, Jack's calm yet cutting response caught me off guard. "Don't be foolish, Lucy. If you want any chance of saving your marriage, seek forgiveness. Your words must be genuine and sincere. He doesn't seem inclined to change his mind." Personally, I couldn't disagree with anything he said during breakfast. I was even more startled when Jack informed William that things would never be the same again. He went on to affirm Mark's decency and argue that he didn't deserve any of the trouble we caused. William, he suggested, should heed his advice and mature. I was astounded to find Mark at the evening dinner. Despite my attempts to engage him in conversation, he simply ignored me. His departure with Charlotte left me devastated. Although I considered chasing after him, what could I say? After all, I had essentially encouraged him to leave and spent much of the trip rationalizing casual encounters. I felt enraged and betrayed, especially upon recollecting my own past actions with Mark. The fact that our actions were premeditated and widely known only intensified my feelings of guilt. I couldn't help but think I deserved it, perhaps hoping that mutual indiscretions could salvage our relationship. The flight back, sans Mark, made me realize the dire state of my marriage, as he had found a way to leave the island ahead of us. I had never properly conversed with him. Following that incident, the gravity of my actions began to sink in, and waves of guilt overwhelmed me. I rationalized about the money. Who would turn down such an offer? My tears became uncontrollable sobs verging on hysteria. Jack and Margaret grew increasingly worried about my well-being. Upon returning home, Mark was present but declined to have dinner with me and the kids. I nearly held it together until they departed. Then I broke down in tears once more. Being excluded from the meal felt like an ominous foreshadowing of my future. When I regained composure, I struggled to anticipate what to say when Mark returned. The dilemma was that everything I thought of echoed what he had already expressed, and I felt embarrassed to seek advice from my mother or friends.
Upon arriving home, the kids retreated to their rooms, engrossed in their usual video games and phones. I observed Lucy in the kitchen, feeling a sense of unfamiliarity. She approached me, almost whispering, "Can we talk? I mean, really talk?" I shrugged, thinking that we should address this eventually, so why prolong it? "I'm sorry, Mark. I assure you it was just a one-time thing and I'll be yours again, faithful as before. The weekend. I did it for the money. It could change our lives as a family. I did it for us. You did it for yourself. We were fine. Money wasn't an issue. You couldn't wait to jump into his bed. You must have enjoyed the fancy dinner and closeness. Overall, everyone had a good time. You're overreacting. It shouldn't mean anything. You really should skip the excuses, Lucy. It's nonsense, and you know it. This wasn't casual. It was a premeditated betrayal. Arrogant, selfish, all those traits I detest, and now I loathe you. So you did the same to that woman. No, I didn't. I sought revenge because nothing seemed to penetrate your indifference. You couldn't see how it affected me. I wouldn't have even considered it if I had a faithful wife. And I hope it stings, really stings, so you might understand my pain. Only I didn't scheme this in advance, making myself look like a fool to everyone else. Speaking of which, how long did your secret scheme take? And was this your first time with him? Her eyes widened. Then she seemed to grasp that this was a genuine and reasonable inquiry. It marked our inaugural dinner, and I sensed his interest in me. Jack and Margaret seemed to be probing, subtly asking if I was intrigued. The four of us dined together, and for the first time in my marriage, I felt a stir of attraction toward another man. His self-assurance was captivating. Knowing it was wrong, I resisted vehemently, avoiding an affair. Then William floated the idea of broaching the subject of opening up our relationship with you and gauging your thoughts on change. We briefly discussed it one evening, but it was evident you wouldn't consent. Then he proposed this plan, thinking the money would sway you. As the trip neared, nerves set in, and he suggested inviting Charlotte to ensure your agreement. Though I wasn't keen on the idea by then, I simply wanted it to unfold. I thought even if you didn't wholly endorse it, we could bounce back. But at breakfast, you shattered these notions, and I began to grasp the consequences of my actions. Was it worth it? Lucy sighed. No, definitely not. I got swept up in the moment and heeded his words. I never intended to hurt you. Oh, so unintentional pain. Straight to phase D. You seem to be enjoying this. Your energy during breakfast said it all. Now you're just telling me what I want to hear. Sorry, the honest answer is yes. I enjoyed it. He was good. It wasn't about being bigger or better, just different. It was exhilarating, a new thrill, and I was captivated by it. He's very experienced and skilled, but it was a one-time thing. Please don't abandon us and break up our family over a single mistake. I found myself smiling wryly. Funny, that's exactly how I'd describe what you've already done. Shattered our family over a one-time act. It's all on you. You're right. It's all my fault. I'm deeply sorry. I love you with all my heart. Well, not entirely. Part of it went to him. And even if you claim otherwise, your love wasn't enough to keep me faithful. How can I trust you again? I was so trusting because I never imagined you capable of this. I feel like I don't really know you. I can hardly bear to look at you, let alone pretend. This never happened. Lucy recoiled in shock. You can't claim to love me. I know. I never imagined losing you. I agree. You only considered yourself and your desires, neglecting me and the kids. But sometimes, love isn't enough. I stated that I tried to calm down and steer away from scoring points or escalating the argument. After a long pause, I continued, addressing Lucy. I mentioned that even if we decided to stay together and ignore the issue, things would never be the same. I emphasized that she had shattered the trust and sense of care we once had for each other, adding that she knew this more than anything. I reminded her that we cared about each other and the kids and didn't want anyone else to get hurt. I expressed my disbelief that she could hurt me like this. She expressed her love for me and admitted to making a colossal mistake, stating her willingness to do anything to rectify it. However, she disagreed with the idea of getting divorced just to appease me, mentioning that I broke her heart and threatened her, actions she believed were not indicative of true love. Lucy stared in silence, stunned, unsure of what else to say. We need to discuss the children. I believe kids are better off in separated families than in dysfunctional ones. So, from that perspective, divorce seems like the best option. I agree you should have custody, but don't try to prevent me from seeing them. It's for your benefit, too. They listen to me. You're not very good at setting boundaries. I furrowed my brow at the irony of her statement. And they're already testing you. It's better for you and for them if I remain in their lives. Lucy shrugged. Seriously, Lucy, regardless of what happens, don't keep the kids from me. Don't alienate me. I'm not a bad father. I treat them well and love them dearly. You haven't seen me angry yet. I'll fight you tooth and nail, spend all our money on lawyers, and we'll tear each other apart in the process. She nodded. I'd never do that. You're a wonderful father, and they need you. They'll want you to keep taking them on trips and coaching them in all their sports. I turned to her. surprised by the first comment where I felt she wasn't trying to manipulate me or justify her actions. "Be careful, Lucy. You're seriously pushing Phase D. Even though you know who I am, why do this? I can't help but think you secretly wanted us to split up." Lucy urgently expressed, "God, never. There's no excuse for this." I became selfish, convinced I could gain something more. It felt like I could somehow hold on to you. "Why didn't you stop me that night and just leave?" Reflecting on the situation, I mentioned finding it hard to breathe and needing to leave. After that, nothing seemed to matter much anymore. The fact that she pursued another guy at any cost meant I had already lost her. I suggested that the conversation ended us long before she ended up in his bed. Perhaps it was all over when she first started planning everything. She spent weeks talking to him and getting ready. Letting her go and not trying to stop her made it easier to accept the end. I emphasized that there was no turning back. That was the beginning of the end. The marriage crumbled in less than 4 days. We divorced, thankfully, without needing counseling. I think Lucy didn't want to justify her actions. It's a shame in a way. I hoped a professional could help her see how wrong she was. She did keep one promise, though, and in the end, we split time with the kids about equally. She even confessed to them that everything was her fault, without getting into specifics. They were old enough to understand, and often chose for themselves where to stay. They were at that age when parents became famous, as taxi drivers and loan sharks. I might be biased, but I think they're great kids and handled the breakup remarkably well. Children can be surprisingly resilient. As per the divorce terms, Lucy could keep our house until the kids came of age, then sell or buy it. But I still wanted it for the children. It allowed them to stay in the same school. Luckily, it paid off. By the time the kids went to college, real estate prices had soared. Lucy had to buy out my share, and it turned out to be the best investment of my life. How could she afford it? Well, we split $250,000 in the divorce. Like with Charlotte, I couldn't claim the moral high ground. What can I say? I'm a practical person. Either way, it seemed like a small price compared to the cost of the marriage and our once happy life. I left my job, received a payout to avoid the embarrassment of a tribunal, and started my own web design business. Lucy kept trying to reconcile, but I wasn't interested. So, was ending the relationship the right choice? It was messy, and there were no winners, but the dire threats and consequences never materialized. I wasn't going to forget or forgive that night.
I, 25 female, lived with my parents, 50 female and 55 male, because it's very close to my service and it's a costly area. It's been a week since I moved out, but I never needed to earlier and my parents didn't ask. So as time went on and I earned more, I put in air conditioning, made my room smart, as well as the house, Alexa, put an excellent shower in the guest bathroom, which I eventually added to my bedroom, and I bought quality furniture for my room, etc. My room turned out to be the best in the house because of my changes. And yes, I paid rent to my parents. Quite fat, by the way. It's been 3 months since they came to talk to me, saying it was time for me to move because they wanted to have their moment alone now, and I could live on my own. Of course I agreed, after all, and I was just living there for ease and convenience. I found a house and needed to make some changes, so in order to not have to buy it when I have it, I replaced all the sockets, bulbs, switches, smart, and the shower with common ones. I paid for them all, and the increase in energy I paid too. I also removed the air conditioner and paid to plug the hole it left. Also, of course, I took all the furniture in my room and Alexa scattered around the house. My parents started complaining that I shouldn't take everything out as they were in everyday use. They were planning to move into the room that was mine, and with these changes I made my room worse, and the house in general too. It's just not smart. Everything I bought was quality. I said they asked me to move and I'm taking everything I bought because I needed them and had other expenses. I made a payment on the house, and these items were all bought by me, and all the increase in energy I had was paid only by me too, and that if they wanted to buy some, I could help search online, but I would take these items. They called me selfish because I made the house worse and removed these items in everyday use as they became accustomed to the smart home. They complained even more when I didn't want to leave the 65-inch smart TV in my room as a gift for them. I didn't leave it because it's new and it was too expensive. I moved a week ago, but they're still upset. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. The entitlement of your parents is on another level. What did they expect you to do, OP? Leave all the expensive stuff you bought while paying rent when they told you to leave their house? Your stuff, your money, your rules. Enjoy your new house. We've made enough to retire charging you rent, so get out and leave all your crap for us too. If you were in a regular non-family rental and your landlord asked you to move for some reason, you would take your items and return the property to the previous condition. So you just did the same thing in this situation. You paid rent to your parents. This makes you a tenant, and as one of those, when you move out, you take your stuff. I think your parents used you until you made the house better, and then decided to throw you out. They're jerks for assuming you'd leave the stuff you bought with your own money. Common use or not, they can buy smart devices and whatnot on their own if they want them that badly. You are the idiot. The TV and furniture sound reasonable, but you should have asked your parents about the AC. Maybe they could have compensated you for leaving the old one in, or they might have wanted to buy their own unit and use the existing holes. Replacing the light bulbs with random cheaper ones might also not be optimal because they might be unnecessary expenses if your parents would want different ones anyway. Also, maybe it would have been less work to just ask your parents for compensation for everything they want to keep and buy it new. Oh man, you are horrid. Absolutely, you are the idiot. First, you were there until 25, vamping off your parents' final days for your convenience, and then removing anything you had bought, despite subsidizing an unreasonable portion of your adult life. I feel for your parents. What a shame for them. My daughter, 18, graduated high school, and I hung a photo of her graduation party on the living room wall. She wants to go to a community college and will live with me and her stepdad. My husband recently earned his master's degree, and yesterday he showed me his graduation photo that he framed and prepared to hang. I asked where we would hang it, and he said the living room. I said, great, right next to Amy's graduation photo then. He said not next to it, but instead of it. I was puzzled. I asked why, and he said he didn't feel it was right to have his graduation photo, a master's degree, be hung next to a high school graduation photo, a high school degree. He said that both photos have different weight and value and suggested I take my daughter's photo down and hang his instead. I was fuming because he refused to let her photo hang anywhere near his, and he had claimed the entire wall. I refused and said that this photo had been here for months, and my daughter deserves to have it on display for encouragement. He got upset and said that I was making it a big deal and could instead use the hallway or something, but I refused. We argued about it, and he insisted on having her graduation photo be taken down and not hung on the same wall as his, due to the difference in degree value and weight. Also, he thought a high school photo wasn't hang-on-wall worthy and called me inconsiderate of his feelings. Finally, he said it was disrespectful to him and his efforts and said that choosing this hill to die on was ridiculous. Am I the idiot for choosing this hill to die on? Not the idiot. I'd hang it right over the toilet where his attitude belongs. So every time he goes, he can be reminded of how much of a pompous idiot he is. I also have a master's degree. I would never be so big-headed to do something like that. Wow, has his masculinity always been this fragile? How old is this man? And why does he think he needs to compete with a teenager? Why is he jealous? This is so strange. Is he also a teenager who excelled so much that he earned his master's at 18? Even if that was the case, he doesn't get to remove your daughter's photo to replace it with his. He sounds like a total idiot. If you get a PhD, will you hang his master's photo in the closet or the basement? Of course he'd pitch a giant fit, and rightly so. Tell your husband that since he got his big boy master's degree, it's time to grow up and recognize that other people have milestones in their lives too, and that the weight and value of such things are not for him to determine. Something that, most people who've graduated elementary school have learned. Your husband just told you your daughter and her accomplishments are meaningless to him, and that she's so beneath him that she's not worthy of sharing wall space with his own. There are massive red flags. However, I will bet that this is not the first red flag. Hang up a copy of the divorce application next to his photo. My 18-year-old son, Eric, just graduated high school. I'm very proud of him because he has ADHD, and school has always been a struggle for him, but he's going to college and his future is promising. I was out with my 2 girlfriends. Both have children the same age as Eric. Well, I excused myself to the washroom, and right before I was about to go back into the room, I overheard one of them say that I must be so disappointed in Eric. Disappointed because he's not studying law or medicine, etc., like their kids. This got my attention, and I kept listening. They continued to talk about how he barely graduated, and then they made a few odd jokes about how Eric would probably follow in my footsteps and marry a rich older lady. Finally, they talked about my son's reputation and laughed about how he cares more about his face than his future, just like his mother. This hurt me a lot. I was heartbroken. Not only were they insulting me, but also my son. I walked into the room and they were silent, but acted as if they weren't just talking crap. So I didn't mention it and simply decided never to hang out with them ever again. But when I got home, my husband asked me if anything was wrong, and I just began to cry and told him everything. I've been friends with them for a year, and gosh, I don't even know. He was really angry. He had invited them and their families to go on a quick 2-day trip, and he called their husbands and canceled. When they asked why, he told them there was no way he was paying to take 2 bitter mean girls that insulted his wife and son on vacation. Well, I got a call from the 2, and they were really upset. They said that I needed to tell him to rethink his decision and that they were just joking around because their kids were looking forward to the trip. I told them that I didn't want to, but they said that I should have talked to them instead of crying to my husband like a weak witch. I told them to screw off, and they replied, "This is exactly why we hate you. Wait, sorry, are you going to go cry to your husband again?" That stung a little, and now I'm wondering if I'm the idiot for not being straight up and crying to my husband instead. My sister agrees that I should have dealt with it myself and that I went too far telling my husband. I mean, it's my sister. I tell her everything. A lot of my previous friends also used to say similar things about me regarding my husband. So after a while, you start to wonder if you're the problem. Not the idiot. I'm just joking is the universal mantra of every idiot bully. You owe them nothing. They're not concerned about their actual friendship with you. They're worried that they lost out on the trip and that they've lost their good reputation. In almost all marriages, you should share with your husband everything. Girls legit just sound jealous of OP's husband. Notice how all their attacks and complaints revolve around OP interacting with her husband. They're just mad that she has a wonderfully supportive partner and they got exposed. So they can't take advantage of OP's husband now. OP, these aren't your friends. Who cares what they think? They insulted your son, called you a gold digger, and then what? They don't expect you to tell your husband what's up? Girl, they just still want your husband to do things for them. It doesn't matter that you cried to your husband about awful people. He's your partner. Just block them and never think about them again. You are a full-grown adult, and I don't understand why you even have to ask this question. You get to have boundaries. Not engaging with people who are cruel and insulting is a very reasonable boundary. Not going on vacation with people who hate you is a very reasonable boundary. You don't have to justify communicating with your husband to anyone, let alone these immature idiots or your gossipy, unsupportive sister. My female father found out that my mother had an affair many years ago with his brother when they were still together. My father became suspicious and pressured all his children to take a DNA test. I was the only one of the 4 who was not biological. This screwed up my relationship with my father. I visited him every weekend, and after the test results, he cut the visits. He always gave some money to his children, but for me, he only gave what he was obliged by law to do. All of my brothers got a car and a trip to another country, a gift divided in half by my parents. I only got a trip because that's what my mother could manage on her own. It hurt to see my brother, 1 year younger, get everything. I lost in 1 month a present, loving, and helpful father. And every time I pointed this out, he told me to understand how hard it was for him to see the fruit of my mother's betrayal and that she lied to him for years, taking advantage of the similarity between him and his brother. For over 5 years, he barely spoke to me, beyond the basics, and excluded me from everything. Parties. It hurt a lot. After 5 years, under the influence of my stepmother, he had more contact with me, but we were no longer the same. Our relationship has always been rocky after that. The situation. I'm getting married to my beautiful bride in a few months, and we're getting ready for the ceremony/party. My father insisted on giving funds, a lot, to help, and although I didn't want to, I did accept it as long as there were no strings attached. Somehow, I think one of my brothers, he found out that he wouldn't walk me down the aisle, and he had a meltdown. He said that this was our moment as we planned it when I was younger, and that it was his dream to walk his only daughter down the aisle. At some point, he talked about helping at the party, which was the trigger. I said he forfeited that right by setting me aside for 5 years for something I wasn't guilty of, so I prefer to go alone. He again began to say that I should understand his feelings, that it was a very difficult time for him, and that he accepted me. I exploded, saying that I didn't give a crap about his feelings because he just ignored that he had raised me for 17 years and then treated me like it was an obligation. He looked shocked, and then he left. My stepmother called me later, saying that I broke my father's heart doing and saying all this, and that he is human, he can make mistakes, and that he was trying his best to make up for the lost time. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Your father took out his feelings of betrayal on an innocent child. He was the adult. You were the child. Yes, he was suffering, but you were still his responsibility, not just for stuff, but as a parent and for your mental and emotional health. He made a choice to abandon you when you needed him. That did damage he can't expect to disappear because he wanted to. He can't expect to have the rewards of good parenting when he was a bad parent to you during those years. Actions have consequences. I hate see it from my perspective people because they never see it from the perspective of others. They demand people give them so many chances, but refuse to understand their actions have consequences. Sure, yeah, the dad was going through a lot of crap in his life at the time, but he actively, emotionally destroyed a child for his own selfish reasons, and then demanded that the kid be suddenly fine with him because things were hard for him. Things were hard for OP, specifically because of him. He doesn't get to go unring that bell. That's solely on him and not you. I hope you have a great wedding and that this doesn't overshadow everything. My parents are terrible at managing money. When I, 27 female, was little, my father gambled away all the savings, about $100,000 in risky penny stocks, which got wiped out in 2008, and we were forced to move into a single bedroom in a house for the 3 of us. Then my mom fell for an MLM, and you can imagine what happened. They lost the down payment to the house they were saving for. I begged them not to sign up for it since I saw it was a scam and showed them evidence it was, and they just laughed at me and ignored me. They lost about $28,000 from that. Then recently, they fell for a college sign-up scam and lost $32,000. They weren't signing up for college. They just needed a loan and tried to go through a private broker who promised to get them a school loan that they could use on whatever they wanted. I went with them to see this broker and told them it was a scam, and they ignored me. So basically, they were trying to scam the government and got scammed instead. I tried to pry the pen away from my father's hands when I got desperate as he was writing down his bank info on SSA, and he screamed at me that I was embarrassing him and did it anyway. Again, they lost money, and now they're homeless because their credit is crap, and they can barely afford even crappy apartments. They probably can't get that money back since they have little documentation on the broker and what he promised. So now they live in their car and are begging me for money. I have about $100,000 saved, waiting to buy a house, and they know about it because I stupidly told them I was saving for a house. And now they're calling me and showing up at my apartment asking for money. They also want to move in the meantime, but my roommate and I agreed that visitation from friends or family is max 1 week to prevent resentment. And if my parents move in, they'll probably refuse to move out. They're going to food pantries, and honestly, I can't find it in myself to be that sympathetic, since they don't listen to me until they need my money. Am I the idiot for not helping my parents when they're homeless? Not the idiot. Do not give them money. You know exactly what's going on. You know what'll happen. You cannot save them from themselves. They are a bottomless pit, and they will bleed you dry and still end up homeless. Please don't give them a cent. Don't let them through your door. Don't do laundry for them. Don't take them food. I've seen so many situations where kids who have worked hard to overcome their upbringings have been sucked back in and have ended up stressed and with no money. You can probably tell it makes my blood pressure increase just to read your story. Make sure your credit is on lockdown. Parents will typically have everything they need to open an account in their children's names. However, if you don't give them anything, and you shouldn't, they may take it upon themselves to get something from you. Lock it down. I'm sorry, but your instincts are right on the money. Your parents require help, but not the kind of help they want from you. For now, you're relatively safe, thanks to your rule with your roommate. But when you get your own house, I'd consider not giving them your address to avoid harassment. They've ruined their lives. Don't let them do the same to yours.